Welcome to the Falmouth Chamber of Commerce.
The Falmouth Chamber is dedicated to working on behalf of our members to make Falmouth a better place to live, work, and conduct business. We are committed to developing the economic, cultural, educational, and civic interests of our community and welcome the support from all organizations to achieve our combined goals. Whether you call Falmouth home, are a summer resident, or a visitor, we hope you take advantage of all that the Chamber has to offer.
Nestled in a classic New England setting amid 200-year-old elm trees and charming colonial homes, stately sea captains' homes, and charming Cape Cod softboxes, Sherway Acres is a graceful blend of Cape Cod's past and present. Sherway Acres, proud sponsor of Falmouth Community Television.
Grand Harbor Waterfront Lodging is nestled in a woodland setting on a picturesque ocean inlet. Grand Harbor offers a family waterfront vacation. Enjoy our private boating beach with dock, rowboats, and paddle boats, oversized heated outdoor pool, and a kiddie pool. Relax in our waterfront and beachside accommodations. 548-4747 or gogreenharbor.com. People think that a locally owned and operated appliance store may not offer what they need. Actually, we have trained and dedicated sales associates, expert delivery and installation, professional repair service, and personal customer service. Plus, we have access to a huge local warehouse with over 6,000 models in stock. Crane Appliance. We call the Cape and Islands home. Carlson Printing for all your printing needs. 508-548-7303 or toll free at 1-800-696-7303. Our email address is carlsonprinting@aol.com. Carlson Printing for all your printing needs.
Hosting services for fctv.org are provided by MegaNet Communications. MegaNet offers a wide array of internet services including Mega Backup Cloud Service, server co-location, T1, fiber, Metro Ethernet, as well as telephone services such as hosted PBX and digital voice. Their number one goal is to keep your communications network up and running and allow you to focus on growing your business. 877-634-2638 or meganet.net.
The Quarterdeck Restaurant, located on Main Street in the heart of Falmouth, specializing in fresh local seafood and other classic American cuisine, featuring a full bar with friendly staff, and the Bucatino Restaurant and Wine Bar, located in North Falmouth just off Nathan Ellis Highway, featuring catering services with 2 full event rooms serving up classic Italian cuisine. The Quarterdeck Restaurant and Bucatino Restaurant and Wine Bar, we're here to serve all our friends in Falmouth.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to the December 9th, 2019 meeting of the Board of Selectmen. If you would please join me in a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have one proclamation tonight. This is the proclamation for National Homeless Persons Memorial Day. Whereas December 21st has been designated National Homeless Persons Memorial Day by the National Coalition for the Homeless and the National Health Center for the Homeless Council, and is so recognized by cities and towns nationwide. And whereas citizens of Falmouth are gathering on December 21st, 2019 for an interfaith memorial service to call attention to the tragedy of homelessness and to remember the 37 men and women lost during 2019 on Cape and on the islands, all of whom suffered from poverty and homelessness. And whereas the cold weather months pose extreme hardship for unsheltered and inadequately housed low-income men, women, and children in Falmouth, as well as throughout Cape Cod and the islands, and whereas people have a shortened life expectancy due to what preceded and occurred while homeless, therefore, we, the Board of Selectmen, call upon all citizens of the town of Falmouth to commit themselves to promoting compassion and concern for all members of our community, especially those who are poor, homeless, and vulnerable. And further, we call upon all citizens of the town of Falmouth to observe Saturday, December 21st, 2019, as National Homeless Persons Memorial Day, by remembering those who have died homeless with a moment of silence, and by supporting all local efforts to eliminate homelessness in our community. In witness whereof we, Megan English Braga, Douglas C. Brown, Douglas H. Jones, Susan L. Moran, and Samuel H. Patterson have hereunto set our hand and caused the great seal of the town of Falmouth to be affixed.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Is there anyone here for, related to this event at all, who's going to host some of the interfaith? No? Okay. So I'm sure that we'll see, my guess is to take a look in probably the Enterprise or online at the Chamber of Commerce to see where some of the interfaith services might be being held.
It's my understanding it's going to take place at the Congregational Church on Saturday, and I think the time is 6 o'clock, and there is a simple meal preceding that service.
Great, thank you. I missed that in here, so. First Congregational Church, great, thank you. Recognition, Mr. Brown, did you have anything?
I'd just like to take a moment to recognize the passing of Percy Kennedy. His service was actually last week, but he was a long-serving member of the Falmouth Police Department, and his service was well attended by the Falmouth Police Honor Guard, as they always do. And they were looking sharp, and he was a really nice guy. I knew him personally for a short time many years ago. I hadn't been in touch with him for several years, but I always remembered him as a nice guy. So sorry to hear him passing. And also, another recognition I'd like to say is the Village Green looks really nice this year. And I guess the DPW guys have some talented painters who've repainted all the reindeer and everything. I thought there was new reindeer, but apparently they were painted. So what a nice job they've done. So thanks to them.
And just along those lines, last week when they were trying to put it up, we had some really tough weather. And so just, being able to get it done on time, it looked beautiful for the stroll. Which was very, very well attended this weekend. And as always, just, I think, adding something each year, so it's a place for families and folks to come and enjoy. So huge thanks to all the individuals who put that together. Great. Any other announcements from anyone on the board? No? Okay. Now we have time for public comment. Just to remind folks, public comment is an opportunity for any individual to talk about something that is not on the agenda this evening. Each individual has 2 minutes, and generally we allot about 10 minutes for the public comment period. If anyone would like to come up, just put your hand up and we'll try and come on up. And just to remind folks that because it's not on the agenda, even if we think it's the greatest idea in the world, the board can't comment on it.
Correct. Yep, I understand.
Welcome.
Thank you. Maury Harlow Hawks, 9 Old Dock Road, West Falmouth. I'm here tonight with the support of many neighbors to speak on the West Falmouth Fire Station. As we all know, the safety of the residents and visitors to Falmouth is the most important task that we look to our elected officials for. We would respectfully ask that the Board of Selectmen debate this important public safety issue in an open session so the residents and taxpayers can fully understand the reason for the decision to close West Falmouth Fire Station by the town manager and our fire chief. The Fire Station Study Committee that will be appointed by you must see that a comprehensive review of the fire department responses is completed with a true analysis of summertime traffic, congestion, and the impact of simultaneous incidents. This being said, we feel, number one, that the West Falmouth Fire Station not close until a new one is built, if that is the outcome of the study and the will of the town. We feel that it is premature to announce any closing when the location of the proposed station is unknown. At the public meeting held at the West Falmouth Library, we were told a new station would be at least 5 years out. Response times are critical to life safety, so the study should have reflected the peak season as well. Staffing with two-person piece of apparatus is a positive condition of the assessment between the firefighters and the town that we can all agree upon. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Brian Anderson, and I'm the owner of T-Ticket Market here in town. I just wanted to tell the selectmen there is a group, Keep America Beautiful, also the affiliate Massachusetts, Keep Massachusetts Beautiful, that is looking for people to partner with in 5 to 10 communities to help with litter reduction. I'm here because of the litter caused by small nip bottles. We have met with the Falmouth Litter Reduction Team last week.
I only want to stop you because we actually are going to be talking about, that's on our agenda for tonight.
I thought only legislation. This has nothing to do with legislation.
Okay.
This is grant money that's available.
Okay.
They're looking for people that will receive the grant money. So the industry, towns, and whoever is the receiver can change the behavior of people that litter our streets. Just wanted to make sure that you knew it was available, and people are looking for people, and Falmouth was one of the communities chosen because the industry highly recommended it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? No? Great. All right, thank you. Next, we have, we're going to vote to issue refunds and bonds. Jen?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Can you hear me? Or do you want me to wait a minute? Yeah,
just wait
okay.
2 minutes.
Move it, and then recess and
Where'd you put that? It's not in the, is it in the next door neighbors? Pretty organized neighborhood.
Thanks, folks. Sorry, it's just that the microphones pick up everything, so. Thank you. I know, right? All right, go ahead, Jen, if you want to get started.
Good evening. As part of your packet, as you know, I come before the board maybe 4 to 6 weeks ago. We were looking at a refinancing, and we're issuing bonds for new projects such as the senior center, the athletic field, and wastewater projects, and the water main projects. We wanted to take advantage of the low interest rates when we were refinancing, because they are at an all-time low again. So we've completed that refinancing and issued bonds, and I'm happy to report that we saved $1.3 million over the next 10 years for the refinancing. And then having our AAA bond rating reaffirmed, we saved $200,000 having a AAA bond rating versus a AA+. So we fared very, very well in the market. We had 13 bidders. I did give Chairman Braga a copy of the vote that needs to be part of the record. You can read, it's 2 pages. If you want to read it while you're signing, you can do that, or we can just, you can vote to accept the bonds and just know that that's part of the vote of everything you're signing tonight, and we can make that as part of the record, and we can get that off to bond counsel. So it's going to, we have a lot of signatures to get this done, because there's a very quick turnaround time on this, and we actually plan the refinancing around the Board of Selectmen's meeting. And we need to get that out in the mail tomorrow. So
I think what we're going to do, just because I don't think we can sign and give and carry on with the business, no one has to leave, but we're gonna probably recess for 10 minutes and sit here and sign it so that we're not giving short shrift to anything else that's on the agenda. So if I have a motion
I would
to do
move
that.
to vote to issue and refund the bonds per the instructions we've received from our finance director.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
And
I would move to, well, actually, I guess you can just call a recess.
I'm just gonna call a recess for a period of 10 minutes so that we can do all of these signatures.
thank you.
Thank you.
Pass those to
Thanks, folks. We're just finishing up the signing. We're back from signing off on a whole bunch of documents. We're finishing up. While that's being finished up, we're just going to do a few licenses because we can probably manage to do those two things at once. All right, so all alcohol restaurant, Añejo Restaurant, 188 Main Street. Bucatino Restaurant, 7 Nathan Ellis Highway. Sea Salt Wine Bar and Grill, 75 Davis Strait. Cape Cod Country Club, 48 Theater Drive. Captain Kidd, 77 Water Street. Conference Table, 205 Worcester Court. East End Tap, 734 T-Ticket Highway. Estia, 117 Main Street. New Peking Palace, 452 Main Street. Paul Harney Golf Club, 74 Club Valley Drive. Quarter Deck Restaurant, 164 Main Street. Quicks Hole Tavern, 29 Railroad Avenue. Silver Lounge, 412 North Falmouth Highway. Cape Cod, the Cape Club, 125 Falmouth Woods Road.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All Alcohol Club, AmVets Post 7336 Palmer Avenue, Falmouth Rod and Gun Club, 203 Carrot Shop Road, Portuguese American Association of Falmouth LLC, 55 Ashumet Road.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All Alcohol Inn Holder, Falmouth Holiday Inn, 291 Jones Road, Falmouth Inn, 824 Main Street.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We'll do one more. All Alcohol Package Store, Falmouth Food Mart and Liquor, 414 East Falmouth Highway, Murphy's Package Store, 410 West Falmouth Highway, Old Barn Package Store, 20 Luscombe Avenue, T-Ticket Market Incorporated, 125 T-Ticket Highway.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll return to that after. Thank you. Under Summary of Actions, Licenses, approve application for a change of manager of an all-alcohol common victualler license, Josh's at Davisville, 339 East Falmouth Highway, East Falmouth. Is the applicant present? Someone here for the applicant?
Motion to approve?
For an all-alcohol license, we've always asked that the applicant be here.
And no one,
I think we've made it very clear, I think we've made that clear to them in the past that, I guess I would ask that we actually do
Hold
ask
it.
them to be here.
Okay. Can we make sure that we reach out to Ms. Martin?
will.
Thank you. Okay. So we'll hold on that one. We have approve application for a change of manager of an all-alcohol club license, Green Pond Yacht Club, 470 Acapasket Road, East Falmouth. Welcome.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. For the record, my name is Kevin Clower. I'm an attorney with Ahmet Clower Law Firm here in Falmouth, and I represent the Green Pond Yacht Club in this application. Kevin B. Harrington Jr. has applied to be the manager. He has a number of years of restaurant experience. He is tip certified. He's here with us this evening, and he's made sure that the bartenders there have actually recertified as tip certified as well.
Great. Does anyone want to ask any questions of Mr. Harrington?
I will just make my
Is-
condition
is-
statement.
Mr. Harrington, do you want to just come on up? You came all this way, so.
In the rain.
The only reason we ask you to be
His
here,
has to
just
go a
so
little higher than mine.
that you can hear our reminder to you that you're responsible for all the alcohol served in the building, and if there are any violations, we'll be coming back to you personally because of your responsibility.
Yes, I understand.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
I move approval.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have motion to, approve application for a change of DBA of an all-alcohol common victualler license, TGC, 132 Falmouth Woods Road, East Falmouth at Saconaset Golf Club. Is anyone here for this application? Okay, if we could do the same thing, Mr. Suso.
This is not change of manager,
Yeah,
this
this-
is just change of DBA.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
I move
It's
approval.
the same manager.
Just
It
the
is.
DBA. Yep,
Move
okay.
approval.
Great.
Second?
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, we have approved application for change of Sunday hours of an all-alcoholic package store license, Himalayan King Incorporated, DBA Old Barn Package Store, 20 Luscombe Avenue, Woods Hole.
And this is something they just need to notify us that we actually can't vote against it. It's something we approve. It's just that they have to notify us that they're doing this. It is a per right change.
Move approval.
Do I have a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. There's that. Okay, this is out of order. Okay, under administrative orders, vote to approve letter of support for Edward Marks Building Advisory Committee application for CPC funding of a historic structures report for the Edward Marks Building, also known as the Falmouth Poorhouse. Is anyone here for this application? This is a letter that was, do we have the draft letter that was sent around
Yes,
to everyone?
the letter's in the packet,
Yep.
correct.
For everyone to take a look at. And again, this is just, you know, the committee is just looking to make sure that when they apply to the CPC for that funding, that the CPC understands that this board, you know, supports that venture, and that they're not going to give money for something that ultimately the board is not in support of.
Correct.
So they're just looking for that.
I reviewed the letter, and it seems very proper to me, so I move approval.
Great.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you. Okay. We have approved Eversource Energy petition to install 1 4-inch conduit and 1 handhole on Wild Harbor Road, east of Waterside Drive.
Move approval?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Approve Eversource Energy and Verizon New England Incorporated petition to install 1 pole on Galetta Drive, south of Galleon Drive.
Move approval?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Vote to,
Just to
oh, I'm
add
sorry.
on, but engineering department's recommendation on both of those was to move approval.
Yes, thank you. And then we have, vote to authorize expenditure of up to $156,000 for professional services related to water quality planning from Article 17 of the April 2011 town meeting.
So this request is to allow the town to continue its work with Science Wares in support of the Water Quality Management Committee and the comprehensive wastewater planning process. The town has found that this consultant provides excellent work at a great value. And this is drawing from a balance of about $350,000 remaining in the fund.
That was my question.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, just perfect timing. We have a public hearing. This is on an application for a change of occupancy numbers of the licensed premises of an all-alcoholic in-holder license, 311 Gifford Street, Opco LLC, DBA Coonamessett Inn, located at 311 Gifford Street. Let me read the public hearing notice. Notice is hereby given under Chapter 138 of the General Laws as amended that 311 Gifford Street, Opco LLC, DBA Coonamessett Inn has applied to change the occupancy numbers of the licensed premises of its all-alcoholic inn-holder license located at 311 Gifford Street, Falmouth, Massachusetts. A hearing will be held in the Selectmen's Meeting Room, Falmouth Town Hall, on Monday, December 9th, 2019, at 7:30 PM on the above application. Falmouth Board of Selectmen is the licensing board. Publication date was Friday, November 29th, 2019, in the Falmouth Enterprise. Okay. Is the applicant here? Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Ellen Blood. I work with Lark Hotels. We're the property management group for the Coonamessett.
And just so that the public, we have it in our packet, but what is it that the Coonamessett Inn and Lark Hotel is looking to do?
We are trying to increase the size of the Cape Cod room, which is the ballroom, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with, from 150 occupancy to 275 seated to 300 standing. If we have a larger group, our architect has claimed that we can have up to the 275 seated in the ballroom with 300 standing, and then in Eli's in the main dining room, actually decrease by 20 that occupancy, so that we have a total first floor only of 430, I'm sorry, 420 standing, 395 seated. And then the outside deck during nice weather would have 60 available people. If the downstairs room, the Mermaid Room, which currently has an occupancy of 27 people, my understanding is that when that number was approved, it was a basement for storage. When we took over the operations, it was a fully functioning sort of gathering room. The architect has deemed that we can have 100 standing or seated down there. We cannot have 100 downstairs and 420 upstairs, however.
Okay.
So we're never going to have 520 people in the property at the same time. The building department, the inspector has approved this as well.
Great.
Does this go to the planning department? My only concern is parking at the establishment already seems quite tight, given the current seating numbers. I just don't know how parking is gonna happen if you're increasing the potential seating by 150 people.
Right, and that's usually something that planning would weigh in on in terms of the comment upon. Yep,
Well,
Sam?
in defense of that, I mean, at least across the street, there's quite a bit of parking, which is where most of us go anyway, when the Coonamessett Inn parking is filled. So, I mean, their events are usually in the evening when the businesses are not active. So I think they're probably in that area would be enough parking, but I certainly would defer to having this go before the planning committee.
And I think if Doug is raising sort of the issue of process, which is, does it make more sense for planning to perhaps weigh in on it first around the issue of parking, and then let us know.
I'm just not sure if that's the way.
I don't know.
If
That's, do you know if there's been any conversations at all in terms of bringing this matter before planning around that issue of parking?
I've not heard anything about us addressing that at all.
Okay.
Even if that's not the case, I think that this board would have a concern, because it certainly is within our purview, so we'd probably want some information, like, is there a formal agreement with everyone across the street? And also a concern, if you were to have a really big event, even if there was an agreement for parking, what about all of those businesses? Where are their customers going to go if it were a daytime event? So, I think at the very least, if this board wants to get more information on the issue, that would be something that the applicant would be responsible to provide information on.
And there's no crosswalk from the Coonamessett parking to that parking also.
Right.
So I think a police detail would.
Yep, Doug?
Yep. So, am I understanding this correctly, that you're just really reevaluating the existing space to realize that you actually could accommodate more in the building, is that right?
Exactly.
And so I guess I would agree that maybe we should talk to your architect, or you should, and say that we have concerns about the parking. Maybe he could identify the number of spaces on the site and how that relates to the occupancy.
Okay, certainly.
Yeah, I think just given that it's already, we've all enjoyed many events there, and it's already tight, and then when we're sort of looking at these other numbers, I think it would be helpful for us to know sort of what the plan is. Obviously, if there's been sort of approval through building and there's no fire issues clearly, then I don't think that this board has a problem with that. I think the parking piece is just.
It's the parking, okay.
Yeah, and just, again, making sure that the process is that we do get the input from planning, because that is something that they generally look into.
Because it is a 50% increase.
Yeah. If I could add that we recently had another establishment that really increased their occupancy significantly, and they realized that they also had a management issue after the fact. So you might want to take back to your group that when you're managing significant more numbers of people, you might need additional staff.
We're certifying everyone in crowd management.
Okay.
So that we have adequate staff for numbers. Pretty much anything that we do that has large numbers are, football banquets or weddings, and not to say that weddings can't get out of control, but it's something that we're aware of and fully intend. We now have 3 certified crowd managers, and we're going to bring all of our bartenders into that status as well, so that they're aware of what to be aware of.
Okay. Another thing that came up, and I noticed that you are starting to advertise concert series. So that maybe is a little bit of a new thing for you, or for at least for that site. And so another thing that came up with another applicant was that the parking lot actually needed to be managed, as large groups of people were exiting all at the same time. There was some issues with the number of Ubers that were coming, and just a lot of coordination that takes place outside the building as well as inside.
Very definitely.
And that just sort of speaks, I think, a little bit more to just the concern about all the great improvements that have happened there. The one thing you can't really do is make more parking, because it's just that set footprint, and it already was kind of small. So did you want to say one thing?
Yeah, it's probably just riding on the coattails of this, but I live across that pond, and there have been events where people deliberately raised up the volume and blasted across the pond. Of course, across water, sound carries and doesn't die out as fast. But for the benefit of all my neighbors and myself as well, please manage the sounds of your various events.
Certainly do that.
because I know it's not you turning up the volume, it's whoever is there to entertain.
Correct.
But it becomes a real annoyance when all of a sudden it's significantly louder than the typical activities that go on there, which are, by the way, I mean, you've been great citizens. It's usually the abuse of that volume knob that raises our ire.
Understood. Thank you.
So, Ms. Blood, what I would say is if you want to get in touch with Diane Davidson, and I know that you were going back and forth, and maybe she can assist you to bring
the
it
next step.
before planning in the way, and then you'll come back before us. But I think that you're hearing from this board that the concern really is just mostly about the parking and managing of that.
I move we continue this hearing to a date to be determined, or not to be determined, but a future date.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank
And
you.
one last thing, also, to really make sure the neighbors are aware, because there's a lot of shared parking in the area. So neighbors around, whether it's across the street or next door, we always like to hear from people with respect to hearings.
Okay.
Great.
We can definitely look into it.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you very much. Okay. We have, under business, status update on Water Division asbestos pipe issue. Mr. Rafferty? and
Thank you, Madam
Mr.
Chair.
Johnson?
Yes, Water Superintendent Steve Rafferty has presented some written materials to you and other members of the board, and he's here to summarize those and answer questions that may come from the board.
Great, thank you. Welcome.
Good evening, Steve Rafferty, Precinct 2, Water Superintendent. Last time we were before you, we had a couple of issues going on. Since then, we've created a standard operating procedure for our staff based upon the DEP guidance for working with asbestos pipe. So it's not just DEP guidance now, it's a departmental guidance. We had a meeting with the crew leaders and the supervisors. We went over that document and made sure they knew that document and understood it. We reached out to a number of firms that do abatement for asbestos. We have lined ourselves up with a firm that we've worked with in this town before. They visited the site. They prepared a plan to clean up the site where we've been storing the pipe. That was submitted to the DEP on November 25th. They have heard back as of today from the DEP with a couple of minor comments on that plan. We're looking at a period of time after Christmas, but before the middle of January, where they will be present for 2 to 4 days on site to clean up the pipes that we've been holding in the yard there. The department has purchased a 20-foot-long shipping container, and our abatement contractor will line it with polyethylene for us. And that's where we will store the pipe going forward, and we will work out a monthly contract with them to make sure that the stuff moves out within the 30 days. Regarding staffing, as you recall, last time I was here, I mentioned that the crew leaders and supervisory staff had been trained in asbestos cement through the Mass Water Works. The staff below them, the utility workers, I have 3 of the staff are going to a training session Wednesday, the 11th. And that leaves 1 person in the staff not at the asbestos cement course yet, and they just couldn't make it for this session, but they are scheduled for a session in February. So by February, what we had will be cleaned up. We will have standard operating procedures in place, which we have now. All staff will be trained and knowledgeable in it, and then it's just a case of probably a couple times a year going through with everybody and reminding them of the exercise of what you do. You know, we've checked that we have all the proper materials on hand for packaging, wrapping it up, bagging it, taping it, and whatnot. Open to questions.
Great, I was just wondering if you could, I know we've benefited from seeing this, and anybody who wanted to download the packet, could you just, and I know you've summarized the part about the abatement piece of it, could you just go through this a little bit just for the public, because these are some of the questions that that folks had. I'm sorry, I can give you my copy. This is what you put together for us. Thank you.
There were several questions out there. One of the questions was, how many water main breaks have we had since 2015 that we had to repair that were asbestos? We keep track of all of our work through something called ViewWorks. We don't distinguish asbestos cement pipe breaks from leaks or anything else. So I went through with a member of the staff. I tried to do our best to identify places we know we had asbestos pipe. I think we came up with around 24 or 25. If I had to throw a number out there, I'd say there's a couple more we might have missed, but 25 to 30 in 5 years of asbestos cement pipes is where we had. People asked if employees have been trained and date certified, and I wound up giving back to you the dates of all the crew leaders and supervisors who were trained and their dates. There was a question about have ventilator or respirator masks been used. Respirators have been used in the department ever since I've shown up 5 years ago. We went through an exercise last February as the OSHA regulations came under the state's labor standards to make sure that the respirators we were working met that requirement. I can't go back 5 years ago and tell you what respirators we bought on that date, but I think they've always been the same respirators, just can't confirm that. We did personal protection equipment training and everything last February, and we'll do it again early this year, coming up in 2020. Somebody asked about the type of saw we're using. We use an ICBS wave model 49.5 F4 14-inch concrete saw. It's a water-based saw that we use to cut with. And the last question I think that was in front of us at the time was, are Tyvek protective suits required? So the training that's offered to everybody in AC pipe talks to protective gear. If you're, this is one of those disconnects that goes on. If you're an asbestos worker and you're going to be spending more than 30 minutes at a time or more than 30 hours in a year, you're an asbestos worker, and they do recommend the Tyvek suits all the time. We have not historically provided Tyvek suits. I have now got Tyvek suits. It's a little bit of a voluntary thing right now. If people want to use them, and they can. And so that's where we're at with that. I bought a bunch of them, and they're sitting there. And this morning we had an AC pipe break on West Falmouth Highway. Big shock there. And the person that cut the pipe today elected to use the Tyvek suit. And afterwards we took it off and wrapped it up and put it in the plastic bag along with the parts and pieces and put the tape on it, and it's sitting there waiting for somebody to pick it up.
Great. And just one of the things that I know, I think you've been talking about, but just alluding to here today as well, sort of that ongoing education, for folks to know kind of what they're, like you said, the Tyvek is kind of optional if they want to use it, but providing some of that. Pretty soon everyone's going to have had the training, but when we have new people come on, there might be a lag in them getting that training, so making sure that they understand some of those risks and the fact that those suits are available, and again, exactly what you just said, kind of that, some of those industry standards that we measure.
We primarily use the Mass Waterworks Association training sessions, and they run them 3 to 4 times a year. Sometimes we've actually ran a session up at our facility once a couple of years ago. They're around the state. So, for example, the 3 people going this week are traveling to Springfield for the class. They'll be getting up about 4:30 in the morning, getting out there, going to class, and coming back. So, yeah, people will go to class going forward.
Great. Thank you. Doug?
So I have a question. I had, I guess, just wrongfully assumed that all DPW employees would get basic 8-hour training. But when I looked at this, I see it was really just the crew leaders and the supervisors.
Right. So,
do you now intend to have the minimal 8-hour training at least for all
yes.
department employees?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Because
well, let me clarify. Everybody in the distribution, where the people that cut the pipe. So I have meter readers, I have operators, and other people. But the people in the distribution will get the training. People that work with the have to go out and fix water main breaks. They will get the training.
Okay, and I guess we ought to talk about that as a general conversation for all DPW employees that are in any type of construction type activity. I mean, maybe for reading meters, it's not essential, but I really think that anyone who's doing any type of construction-type related activity should have this 8-hour minimum training, because you don't know what you don't know. And when you get that training, it gives you a little heads up as to what to look out for your own safety. That's the number one thing that it teaches you. Not, you don't just have to blindly follow orders. If someone's telling you to do something dangerous,
You're
like,
not comfortable with that.
you know, I had a guy once hand me a chainsaw on a rainy day and tell me to climb out a window and chop off a piece of wood, and I said, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
So,
Madam Chair, just to interject, it might be an appropriate time, I know Steve's referred to this today and also in the past, that there was a training session for a mandatory one for all public works employees related to the OSHA standards and OSHA guidelines, which have become applicable to the town as of this year. And with the able assistance of Deputy Public Works Director Peter McConerty, that was a formal training session was held, which, as Steve has noted, is going to be replicated in successive years. I don't know, it might be helpful, and many of the things you're talking about, Doug, perhaps all, are covered in that training. I sat through a portion of that myself earlier this year, having been invited to do so, which I greatly appreciate the proactive stance that the department took. Would it be helpful to have some comments from Peter McConerty as well on that at this point?
I'd be interested if you don't mind.
I have just a quick question for Steve before. Just on the many West Falmouth Highway pipe breaks, I'm getting asked by a lot of folks what the long-term expectation is. Lots of people without water, lots of traffic rerouted, and it seems like just in the last month, maybe 3 times I've waved to you going by.
Oh, you're probably a little, so, I'm gonna backtrack momentarily. When I first started, we were fixing pipes on Worcester Court pretty regularly. And the joke inside the department was how many couplings have been replaced and how many are left to go. And we over one winter, replaced that entire pipe. So, without going too far and making any promises that I don't want to make, I do have our engineers looking at where breaks have been and coming up with a real capital plan, but we have a couple of areas where we have asbestos pipes that are in the 50-year-old category and the joints are failing. And they're going to be high on the list of how do we figure out what to do about them and how do we finance the replacement of those pipes. So West Falmouth Highway is on that list. It's not the only location, but it's on the list, okay?
Of things that keep breaking.
Of places that have 50-year-old asbestos cement pipes, that the rubber gaskets begin to fail after time, and when the water starts squeezing out around the gasket, it erodes the concrete on the pipe, and then more water comes out, and then they fail. So we've had Manant is another hot spot, a portion of Route 28 on the 2-lane portion going from where the old plant was up towards Brick Hill Road, and West Falmouth. Those are my 3 sort of hot spots for AC pipe, and I don't want to stand here and say one has got a greater or lesser need than the others, but they are all areas that we're very aware of, and when we get a break, we get out there as quick as we can and shut the pipes off and fix them.
Okay, thank you.
Doug?
What do you have a time frame for long-range planning of when those can be replaced?
No. Well, I shouldn't say no. I've asked, our engineers are creating a list of, keep in mind here, there's 300 miles of pipe in town. We're talking AC pipe right now, but I have a number of areas with old cast iron pipe. There's a number of areas where we have some 2-inch pipes that are now servicing, 10 or 15 homes, and they don't get water and pressure. So we're trying to organize and sort through that. I have more than once stood up before people in town, maybe perhaps this board, and said, if we have 300 miles of pipe and 100 years is what you expect for a pipe to last, that's 3 miles of pipe we should replace every year. We're replacing 3 miles of 16-inch pipe right now on Main Street at, several $1 million. So if you're willing to go down that path with me and develop a plan for several $1 million a year of pipe replacement going forward, that changes water rates, and I'm willing to work with you and do that.
And I don't want to go too
That's a
far
big step.
afield from,
That's a big
also from
step.
the agenda item, so maybe we'll.
That's a big
return to
step.
that. Great,
Well, we'd
thank
like
you.
to start planning and getting prioritized, I think, and get another agenda item in the near future to discuss that priority list.
Peter, do you want to just come on up and sort of speak to the kind of general question that Doug had about some of that training, excuse me, department-wide?
Peter McConaty, Deputy Director of Public Works. The beginning of last year, actually on February 1st, 2018, OSHA took more of a prominent role with the Division of Labor Standards. So it is actually, OSHA has always, in all other states, including Massachusetts, has always worked with the DLS. When you work with the DLS, it actually refers to OSHA. But there was maybe a miscommunication or informative that we never followed OSHA, which was not true. But as of February 1st of 2018, we do follow with OSHA. It's just that OSHA is private. They will not show up on your job site, but DLS will show up on your job site. And so last February, what I did do is I took all the departments in Public Works, and we had a meeting at the Herman Room, and I went through two presentations. One presentation was the difference between OSHA and DLS and how they work, the Division of Labor Standards, the safety inspections. And then the second was if an incident or something happened in town, what to expect and what's going to happen from the DLS if something happens, when they are called, when they are triggered, when there's imminent dangers that they show up. DLS, if they're driving down a street and no matter what town where they're going, if there is a trench operations, they will stop and they will watch to see what's going on. They will see who the competent person is to see what's going on in that site, no matter where you are, no matter what town in Massachusetts, and actually across the country. So that was one portion. That was the first portion of the presentation. The second portion of the presentation is all the tasks that Public Works do. So we basically started out by saying, so we have facilities, parks, highways, water, wastewater, fleet services, and beaches, and water, wastewater. There's eight divisions. We do tasks that, there's always room for error, and we try to close it up. So what we went through was all the typical tasks that we do. The cutting of the grasses at the fields, all the different tasks that we do within the Public Works. And one of them was that I made sure that I went through was trench operations, going through trenches and safety operations and traffic control. The water department, the highway department, the parks department deal with that every day with tree work or with their highway work or with their road work. When you have an open trench in a water department, it's a saturated, most times 80% of the time, and on Cape Cod, it's a saturated sandy soil. So you're going to have problems no matter what. You're going to have cave-ins, what to do and what to expect for it. After that, I did fall protection for working on roofs with the facilities department. We've done aerial lift protection. This past summer, I did one more trench and competent person training at the Gus Caney Center with all the water department, highway department, and parks department. So we are going through as much safety and as much training as we can in-house. Situations that Mr. Raffia talked about with the training for the OSHA, I'm actually included and going to be taking the class with them on this coming Wednesday. It's out in Springfield. So it's not, they don't travel around the state. You got to travel out to Springfield. So it's, along with the training, an 8-hour course of training, it's 6 hours of driving out and driving back. So it becomes a long day, but it's worth it. We need to do that. We're going to have all our employees trained in that, but we have to wait for that training to occur. So when those classes come up, we will sign them up, but it's not immediate. It's when they happen. I believe the next class that's going to be coming up is in February, and we'll be sending some other employees. But one thing that I'm thinking of right now, what I'm looking to adopt into next year, is onboarding. So every year, we're going to be doing safety training for all the Public Works, for all the different departments. It'll be different training for the different departments. But onboarding, as if a new employee comes during the year, I want to have a few days to be able to sit there. There are many DVDs, YouTubes, and training modules out there from the DLS and OSHA that they can go through. And also, I'll be able to sit down with them and go through what I have and what we went through. So Those are some things that we're working out right now that are in the works, but that's something that I'd like to be bringing into place next year. So when we do have a new employee come in, the grade 4s, the grade 5s from the different departments, just won't be sending them out there. We usually don't, they're with other crews, but we won't be sending them out there with a weed whacker or a saw or what happened. Cut-off saws, you can get seriously hurt with a kick-off from a cut-off saw or a chainsaw. So those are the things we're going to be looking at. So we have been taking a progressive approach at that over the past couple of years.
And one of the things I know, again, just along that sort of continuing education or introductory education, we've done this great reworking of the handbook for committee volunteers. I'm sure that there are handbooks and new materials that new hires get, but if there's that focus on what you're talking about, some of that, that when you're bringing people on board, that introductory, if just what Doug is talking about, reiterating what I'm sure you do, but reiterating, if you're not comfortable with something, you bring that to the next person. If you're not comfortable with either an instruction or don't understand, the safety regulations around something. So just making sure that folks don't have that gap, because like you said, you guys handle the, most of the really dangerous work in town, and there are a whole lot of ways that folks can, get injured, so.
Correct. And so one of the forms that we do send out every year is a PPE chart. And it's basically all the forms, it's every piece of PPE protection equipment that every employee in Public Works will use. And it's by department, but each employee comes in, they're shown how to use it, they make sure they know how to use it, or they have had experience with it. They initial every single line item, there's 14 or 15 line items, whatever applies to them is applicable with whatever task they're doing. And then at the bottom of the sheet that they sign it that says that they've received it, they're using it, and they're taking care of it. Parts of OSHA is that it's the employer's responsibility to give the training and to give the PPE and make sure that they have the tools, the proper tools that they need to do the job. The second part of it is the requirement of the employees. If there is training, they're required to go to that training. They're required to take to use the PPE and also maintain the PPE. So there's it's like a bunch of marbles we're all walking on, but everybody has to work together to come to the middle on that. It's not just management, it's not just the employees, it's everyone has to come together on that. So,
Thank you.
But, and we do, I didn't mean to interrupt, but we do have a safety manual in Public Works. It's about 120 pages long, and there's 20 different disciplines and tasks in it each task is outlined as required by OSHA or DLS. So when an employee does come on board, they know of it, and we do give them whatever pieces of that or whatever tasks of that are applicable to their positions.
I just want to see if Doug, did you have
Yeah,
that?
I just wanted to follow up and say, so Springfield is a pretty big drive, and is that because it's a specialized training for the asbestos?
It's a specialized training through that OSHA it's through Mass Water Works, but that OSHA puts on. And
It's because of the asbestos related.
Correct.
But as far as general safety, you probably could get a private safety training facilitator to come and do a training, and I don't know what the limit, they have limits of how many people per class?
Yeah, usually what they do, there's multiple agencies out there. A lot of times we use Bay State Roads. Maya is our insurance company. They give a lot of free training to us, which we like because we can actually use the Gus Canny Center. They come to Falmouth, and we usually fill the room with them. And then we get credits through our insurance to be able to use that. But there is a limit. They're usually like 30, 35 people. They don't like to train more than that because there's a lot of hands-on. We recently did an aerial lift, and every person that participated in that workshop had to we brought our tree truck down. They went through our tree truck, and they had to go up in that aerial truck 60 feet and do the aerials, be able to use the knuckle booms, check all the hydraulic hoses. So it's pretty in-depth to do that. And we keep track of all the forms and all the training that we do. And all the training that we do, the employee signs off that he's taken it.
And then they get a little card that says OSHA certification card?
If it's an OSHA certification, if it's an OSHA 10 card, that's a general industry. It's an OSHA 10 card, they'll take that. It's just the basics of, electric hazards, fall hazards, or what have you.
Right.
You can get OSHA 16, 24, 40, 100. But as you do go up, yeah, you get a wallet card.
Right.
But in Public Works, we want everyone to have the OSHA 10, and then if they choose, or if something, like if they're dealing with electrical, we might push them up to a 16 or a 24.
Okay.
or 40. 40 is HAZWAP, it's hazardous waste, but
Right.
you're starting really getting up there, but.
Yeah, thank you.
Sam?
And yeah, actually, you answered one of my questions, which is, do you have a record of the training that each employee actually participates in, and of course, the date that was completed? But I guess the other question is there a policy for supervisors when they're assigning work to actually review that list of training on that particular individual before they're placed into a task where they may not have been adequately trained, or it was a long time in the past?
Yeah, so what usually happens is, the water department, they'll be trained, the distribution side of the water department, Steve can speak more to this, is they'll be trained in whatever task that they do. The highway department, they'll be trained in whatever task that they do. So when the departments come together, every morning, we're scrambling, we're mixing and matching in groups and teams together, and they will have the training that the highway department uses. They might not have the training that the distribution in the trenches using, but they have the highway. And very rarely do we switch up divisions. We will not take highway and push them into water. They might be an operator, but they will not be in the excavation or in the trench.
Okay, great. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have a report from, oh, yep.
Mark Finneran. I don't know how accurate this is, but I was told that the town actually sponsored one of these asbestos training sessions this past May or June for southeastern Massachusetts, and no town employees were able to access this training, allowed, invited, or whatever. I just want to know if that's actually accurate, and then if so, that seems like quite an oversight.
Mr. Rafferty, do you know anything about that? Can you speak to that?
Again, Stephen Rafferty, the water superintendent. I don't have the date in front of you, but yes, we have held one of the AC pipe training courses here. I believe there were 18 attendees. I believe 2 of them were from our water department. I have told Mass Waterworks that our facility is available for any future training that they wish to do. Touching upon the fact that folks are going to Springfield, Mass Waterworks runs 3 to 4 of these sessions every year. They move them around the state because all the water departments in the state need to push their employees through this. We got some slots in the Springfield training. There's a training in Duxbury. They've talked to me about perhaps next fall doing the next round down here in Falmouth to help some people on the Cape. So I could go back and look up the names, but I believe it was 2 out of 18. I don't remember the exact date.
And we, of course, we're not asking you for any names because that's their personal employment history, but thank you. Okay, great.
Hi.
Hi, ma'am, come on up.
A couple of things to say. My name's Terry. About the asbestos.
Last name?
Jewett.
Thank you.
Okay. About the asbestos, I'd like to know who is accountable, who is the supervisor that was in charge of that? Was it Ray Jack, the water
Charge
department?
of?
Well, the water department. Ray Jack was?
So Ray Jack is our superintendent of public works.
Okay.
And Mr. Rafferty is, what your exact title is?
Water supervisor.
Water.
Director of Public Works.
Thank you. I'm sorry, thank you.
Okay. Ray Jack is now retiring, correct? Because I've listened on, cable TV, I've read everything. And I'm here speaking for myself and my husband that's a Vietnam veteran. He was so upset about this. He lost a lot of people in Vietnam because of the Agent Orange. And he knows, because he's worked doing these things, how dangerous this is. So Ray Jack is retiring because I worked for the government. I know how it goes. You screw up once, okay, you get a slap on the wrist. You screw up twice, you screw up three. No,
Ma'am,
don't
we're gonna-
interrupt me. My husband
Excuse me, ma'am.
fought for
we're
freedom
past
of speech.
Yep.
I should be able to speak.
Excuse me, ma'am, you can speak about whatever your thoughts are in this, but we don't allow people to talk about employees of the town
Okay.
or their personnel
All
information.
right, I'll tell you what I've observed in the government between my husband and myself. The government did not protect him, and I worked for the government and dealt with a lot. And I saw how people were treated in there. And I also saw people that screwed up. They would say, retire instead of getting fired or go out on a mental stressor. Now, who was Ray Jack's supervisor? Is it Mr. Suso? I think it is. Okay. Another thing I have to say is, you, all you people here, you don't make any money. I don't know what you do this job for, because it's not being done. Number one, you don't get the respect, you get no money. So obviously, there's something going on.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful. Mr. Halen, did you want to make a comment?
I do. 3 comments if I could. Michael Halen, Precinct 5. The last meeting that was discussed, they said that, I believe Mr. Rafferty or Mr. Jack said that they would have a container for the asbestos pipe. It's been over 6 weeks now, and I wanted to know if the pipe from this morning's West Falmouth water main was bagged properly and is in that watertight, seal-proof container, and if that container is in town, or what happened with the pipe this morning. My second point is, according to, I'm pulling up some legal stuff here, I believe Mr. Rafferty said that the suits for employees are optional, which is not the case according to 453 CMR 6.15, which says that all suits are required for the workers. It says that all the workers have to have respiratory protection, and all the workers are supposed to be having personal exposure monitoring. I don't know if that's happened. I would like to talk about the last 4+ years if any employees had personal exposure monitoring, respiratory protection, etc. I know that we know in the past that under Mr. Rafferty, they've never once talked to DEP about the projects. That's what he said last time. And I don't know if they called today about that thing. My last question is, last meeting, there was some discussion of testing the water for asbestos. Mr. Rafferty said he would do it. Mr. Jones had an uneducated opinion that there's no problem with that because rainfall can't go in that water. So I was hoping that we would know if we've tested the water in the last 6 weeks. Since Mr. Jones and Mr. Rafferty claim that there's no issue with the water, do we have the test to prove that? Thank you.
Mr. Rafferty, did you want to speak to whether or not we've tested the water for asbestos? I know you pointed out that it's not something that's in the usual sort of list of things that are tested for all the reasons that we talked about in terms of the dilution and the risk.
Do you want me to answer that one question or any other questions?
Let's just start with that one.
So roughly every 10 years, we have to test the water for asbestos. I believe our next one is 2022. There were no issues with asbestos when it was done the last time. We could spend a few $1,000s testing the water for asbestos to verify. I have not made that decision yet to do it. Other things were online. I don't have a problem spending that money to do it.
Right. And then there was a question about whether or not the pipes from today's water main break are being properly stored.
So the pipes from today's water main break were removed from the trench. We followed the new SOP that mirrors the state's guidance document. They were all properly bagged up. They were all taped up. We do not yet have the trailer. As I mentioned earlier, we've procured a trailer, but it's being prepared. It's not yet delivered. So we put the pipe with the wrapped pipe that was in the existing yard today.
And the other question was about the Tyvek suits.
Right.
So,
Not just Tyvek,
okay, I think you missed the first part. So if you could just reiterate, because I don't think Mr. Halen was here.
I don't have the laws and the regulations memorized at this point, but I believe the reference given was for asbestos workers.
Correct.
Which is different from the folks that we have that are working around asbestos pipes, because it has to do with exposure, time, duration, events and whatnot. So the guidance we're working under, provided through the DEP, treats the folks that work around asbestos pipes and water departments, not as asbestos workers, but people that are near asbestos and have some exposure to it, but are not asbestos workers.
So
All of the people that are going to class will learn this week from an industrial hygienist the rules around asbestos and the requirements for protection and whatnot, but part of the documents they get refer to, they can, if they choose, wear Tyvek, but they should be aware that if they are using Tyvek, particularly in the summertime, that they may, in fact, be subjected to other
risks
because the Tyvek doesn't breathe very well. So we've made Tyvek suits available until everybody's got their training and can make their decisions.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Does that answer all your questions?
Well, if I may. So at the last meeting 6 weeks ago, Mr. Rafferty and Mr. Jack, I'm not sure which one, but one of them said that they would have a container for the upcoming breaks. It's been 6 weeks, and there's still no container, so I wonder if we can get a timeline of when that's going to happen.
Again, I think you missed that in the beginning. They've contracted with a company that they've worked for before that is bringing a lined container, and so they're providing it to the town, and that's coming in short order, and that will be where everything goes. So they've worked with the company has to obviously get it, line it, and bring it to our town. So that is in the works.
Then to his other point, asbestos workers, there are quite a few town employees who are working with asbestos who have not been trained, have not been giving respirators or any kind of protection according to the CMR guidelines, which is the DLS and the DEP, et cetera, OSHA. So my question is, why hasn't that happened in the last 4 years? And my final question, once again, 6 weeks ago, Mr. Jones said there was no problem with the water, which I don't necessarily think that he's a scientist. However, Mr. Rafferty said he would test the water. And now he's saying that might cost thousands of dollars, but with the amount of contamination that could be going into our water, I would have assumed that if that was my responsibility, I would have had it tested by now. I think the health and safety of our children in this town is somewhat important. I know that from the reaction of this board and the town management, it doesn't seem that important that this could be a serious issue, and you all are like, in the future, we're going to take care of this, but we don't know what our kids are drinking tonight. And he's had 6 weeks to do a simple water test. And if it costs a few $1,000s, what's more important, a few $1,000s or the millions of dollars of lawsuits if there is a problem? And I feel bad for our children in this community when you have management and a board of selectmen who are just saying, we're going to fix it in the future, and they could be getting sick right now.
I don't think anyone's saying we're going to fix it in the future.
And why haven't we tested it in the last 6 weeks?
And number two, you are standing here, and I don't want to critique you, but you're standing here making very broad statements about the law and about health hazards and water contamination, just as you're critiquing that Mr. Jones is not a sort of engineer around water flow.
He's not.
You are not an attorney, and you are not an individual who has training, as far as I know, around all of these issues that you're talking about. So you're citing some regulations that you are citing inappropriately. Number one, you're making very broad statements about asbestos work. And if you go through and you read all through the regulations, there are different categories for people who do different work with asbestos and different types of asbestos. So I think your concern is very appreciated, and the fact that you brought those issues before the board and the town is appreciated. But when you take it to the next level, where it's just really engendering fear that there aren't facts to support that, that's not appropriate, and it's not solution-oriented. This board takes this very seriously. You've missed part of what took place, but Mr. Rafferty went through all of the things that have been done in the last few weeks. Very significant steps that have been taken. Training that is going to be engaged in and ongoing. And those are not small things. People on this board live in this town. We drink that water. I have children. My children drink that water. If we thought that there was a serious concern about the water being contaminated, everybody on this board who lives in this town would immediately have taken that seriously. But we have someone who is trained in the science of it, and while absolutely missteps were taken around this issue, you're making a risk about asbestos sort of contamination that isn't supported by science. And I'm not going to go on about it because I'm not a scientist, but I think it's very helpful to stick to facts that we know and not just put out there, other information that is based on really, frankly, just your own summation of some
Thank you.
serious information.
If I can critique you as well, I myself have spoke to OSHA, the Department of Labor Standards, and the DEP after our last meeting. And all three groups have told me that according to different guidelines, both state and federal, that all workers should have full body suits, that all workers need to have ventilated masks. And I would hope that all five of the Board of Selectmen have spoke to the DEP, DLS, and OSHA individually.
Ventilated masks.
No, my question was, have all of you done the homework that I have
Yes,
and spoke to the DEP?
We've done the homework. We've read the regulations.
No, have you spoke to the DEP, DLS, or OSHA?
I haven't spoken to the
Okay,
DEP.
so I'm going to critique your job as a select person, and maybe you should do that before you start pointing your finger at my job as a parent and a person in this community. Do your homework, because you're sitting up here, and the person that you believe who has a scientific background mishandled this stuff for 4 years. He claimed at last meeting. The DEP, the DLS are investigating. He did not follow OSHA guidelines according to everyone I've spoken to. And just because you all say it's okay and he's going to handle it, that does not help our children and our community. So please don't critique what I'm doing when you yourself, you're a lawyer, but are you a scientific lawyer? Are you an environmental lawyer?
No, that's why
you're
I'm not
not.
speaking. That's why I wouldn't even begin to start talking about the science or even all of the specific regulations. When you read through them all, they're very complex. People, focus on this. And again, you're making general statements.
I spoke to the DEP, DLS, and OSHA. And if you have not, I would enjoy it for you to not critique what I've been doing.
Okay, thank you.
And you have not, I'm assuming.
Thank you, Mike. That's
I'm
helpful.
assuming, but you have not spoken to those agencies, have you?
I haven't spoken to all three of those agencies.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Yep, Sam?
I have a question on the risks associated with asbestos. I understand that airborne asbestos is a problem with asbestosis, but what about waterborne asbestos in the water? How much of a health risk is that?
I know Steve spoke about this last time, but do you mind?
Because that's the accusation, and no specifics have been mentioned about where the risk is located. And I just want to know, is there a difference? Excuse me?
The employees.
Excuse me?
Yes, sir.
You're not recognized right now.
Okay.
I asked Mr. Rafferty for his perspective. Sorry, that should have been you, Megan.
Specifically, could you just repeat what you repeated at the last time you met about the risk of asbestos in the water?
I don't have my notes in front of me.
Okay.
So this is going to be a general statement.
It was like 7 million, 70 million.
Airborne,
Yeah.
the counts are basically single digits per 100 cc's. In water, it's around 7 million per 100 cc's. So there's a vast difference in that. And the WHOI and some other data that, this U.S. government made everybody test for asbestos under the first round of the unregulated contaminants. Numbers were, quite low. Couple places in the couple millions, if you would, for asbestos particles. But again, we do pH control, so the pipes that we're putting the water through should not be coming apart. I don't have a problem going and running the tests. I've checked into what it takes to do it. There are some labs that do it. We have to collect the samples a certain way, and it's on the list to get done because we do certain sampling on a monthly or quarterly basis. And I will go through and do that sampling just to confirm that there's been no change in the asbestos numbers from whenever they were done the last time, which was not a number that rose to the level where anything had to be reported to anybody. So,
Madam Chair, could I just follow up? Thank you for the the very careful, very accurate answer, Steve. I'm just concerned, no, if you could stay there, if you would, if it's okay with the chair. I'm going to ask you to try to make it a little plainer, non-scientific. What I think I heard you say is that airborne, the risks are relatively very high, so the standard is a very small number of parts per, is it billion or million?
Well, it's fibers, so they measure it as fibers over a certain length. So it's a single-digit number. It's like 5 or 10. I don't remember the number. Per 100 cc's. So if there's 5 to 10 airborne particles in a liter of air, and you're exposed to that for over 30 minutes or over 30 hours a year, it's not so good.
Okay, and the standard in water?
7 million, I believe.
7 million fibers in 100 cc's of water, and that's okay?
In a liter of water, yeah.
If you go over 7 million, that's okay?
You have to notify everybody through the consumer conference report that you have asbestos over a recommended health advisory limit.
Okay, and if I could, Madam Chair, so can you talk about how first of all, the gradient, is it correct that the gradient from where the pipe was stored goes away from the pond? Is that correct?
Yeah, groundwater, where the pipe has been stored, groundwater is going towards Buzzards Bay.
Okay, so it does go away from Long Pond. And so there's no reason to think that a single fiber would get from that storage location to Long Pond. Not that it's impossible, but it's going the other way. Now, let's just say it does go the other way, and it does go to Long Pond. Do we have filtration that might capture some of that?
Yes.
Okay. So the risk of asbestos in the drinking water, to me, as a non-scientist, sounds really low. Is that right? Is that generally your take?
Yeah.
Not to say we couldn't test for it, but the reason you didn't immediately
I'm going to do this in a simple fashion. There's millions, if not hundreds of millions, of miles of asbestos pipe in the United States. After World War II, during World War II, when iron and steel were not available, they came up with asbestos pipe. It was popular in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and then it fell out of favor because of issues having to do with a lining they put in the pipe, not because of the asbestos issue. So no asbestos pipe's been installed in this town for a long time. We've replaced a bunch of it. Asbestos does not leach out of lined pipes in the ground. We'd have to, the ability to get to 7 parts per million, I can't even fathom how you would get there.
I just think it was important to really state it plainly. The risk of asbestos in the drinking water really doesn't sound like there's any reason to worry about it whatsoever, but we can test it just to be sure.
Yeah. Sam and then
just
Sue.
to follow up, what is the health risk associated with waterborne asbestos fibers?
You might be pushing me into an area that I'm not an expert in. I will tell you that it has to do with gastrointestinal issues, but I don't know specifically what they are.
Mr. Hanlon, I'm not going to have you comment on the medical science of.
I just want Sam to yell at me again.
Okay.
So
Well, no, I know, thank you, but, thank you, Mr. Rafferty. Mark, did you have a question or a comment?
Yeah. I just received a text from the employee that spoke with me about the training at the Falmouth facility in May or June, and he maintains that no Falmouth workers were there. And then I'd just like to comment that this meeting and this town hall, we don't lose our constitutional rights when we walk in the door. We are held by the first. Well,
I'm sorry. What constitutional rights have you lost?
Well,
There's no
in the
constitutional right to
speaker's policy, I was going to comment, but I didn't want to step on the toes of the people speaking about West Falmouth Fire Station because that is correct. But I mean, and it's very important. But during the last meeting, Mr. Suso tried to shut me down for using someone's name. Oliver Wendell Holmes, this has been adjudicated in the Supreme Court, said that I have every right but to scream fire in a crowded theater. And at least 2 of you are lawyers, and you're familiar with Sullivan versus the New York Times. And we are allowed to use anyone who's a public figure's name. That's absolutely correct. That's why our speaker's policy was changed, because of the case of the Needham School Board, where the woman was not allowed to speak and was removed, and then tragic circumstances transpired. But you're incorrect in saying that we cannot use someone's name. And
We've actually
Mr.
never-
Suso was incorrect to interrupt me during the
Actually,
speaker's
Mr.
comment
Finneran,
period.
We've never said people's names can't be used. What we have said.
You just told her.
No, what we have said is we are not going to allow employees of this town, whether they work for the DPW, and we're talking about this, or whether it's somebody who works, if it's Mr. Palmer in the clerk's office, we're not going to let people who work for this town be disparaged. This is not a forum where they can, they have an opportunity to rebut whatever is said about them. It is completely unfair. It has nothing to do with your constitutional rights. It's about an issue of fairness, not to disparage somebody in a way that they cannot respond to. I would not let anybody stand up there and do the same thing. I wouldn't let them do it about any person in this whole town, but particularly for our employees. I would never let anybody stand up there, and there have probably been times when we've shut people down when they've tried to say negative things about Mr. Finneran or other individuals. That is about common decency. It's about being a community. And if we can't abide and comport our free speech to not denigrate somebody, talk about policies that we don't like. That's absolutely appropriate. Talk about mismanagement. That's fine for Mr. Hanlon to say whatever he wants. We're all sitting here and we can respond to him. It is not fair to speak about somebody and critique them when they are not here to respond to that. I wouldn't let someone do it about you, and I'm not going to let them do it about a public employee. And if we start picking like folks high up who make over 100,000, we can rip them apart. But we're not going to say anything about someone down here or the other way around. It's across the board.
Again, it's Sullivan versus the New York Times. He's a public figure. Anyone's allowed to use his name, and she's allowed to question his performance because we pay them. And that's just the way it is.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Halen, final comment on this?
Final comment, not about the asbestos, but as a select board who wants people to come and talk to them, the way that Selectman Patterson just yelled at me was uncalled for. And if you want someone to come to this meeting and give their opinion and give how they feel things should be run, yelling at somebody like a lunatic is uncalled for.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have a report from Waterways Committee. Thank you, Mr. Rafferty, Mr. McConerty. Appreciate you answering those questions multiple times.
Hi, I'm Jeff
Welcome.
Hines. I am the chairman of Falmouth Waterways.
Thank you. Do you have a presentation that we need to?
I do. Diane had it. And
Yeah, it's in there.
Yeah. Gave her a couple of files. One of them has, it's like 85 megabytes.
I don't know which one. Can you tell which one this is?
There's embedded video in it.
Is that the one you want?
I can't tell if there's videos in it or not.
They're both there.
They're both here, okay.
All right.
Sorry.
We demand the videos, so.
The file was so big, and there's a 1-minute video in it that I have provided 2 different ways. So, thank you for your time. I'm Jeff Thomas. I'm the chairman of the Falmouth Waterways Committee. Most of our committee is here, and Kevin King, we just didn't run out. Oh, there he is. He's doing part of the presentation, too, and I was hoping he didn't run out the door. So, basically, we're a fully staffed committee and have been pretty much for several years. Most of the committee members are here today. Our committee is a little different, as Greg Frazier is a non-voting member, our harbor master, and our permanent Board of Health representative, Chuck Martinson, is also a voting member of the committee. So what I'm talking about here today is I'm going to tell you what we did in 2019. Last time I was here was in middle of 2018. We've got a couple of projects I want to brief you up to date where we are this year that we haven't finished yet for 2019. And then there's 2 items in 2020 that we'll talk about. And then one of the things that our committee wanted everyone to understand is as we feel that our value as since we don't have any kind of authority, right, we just recommend. But we believe one of our big values to the town, to the selectmen, and to the harbor master's office is we're a conduit for the public to come in and voice their concerns and to get educated on the waterways and the navigation that they feel they can get help that way. And so we believe that's one of probably our biggest reason to exist is to help the public. And as part of that, we're creating something, it's a very awkward title. I called it a committee tracking tool initiative. Kevin King is the main architect of that, and it's kind of in a rough draft stage, but we wanted to show you what we're doing with it and how that kind of plays into that. So this year was not a big year for us. Normally in the spring, we do our normal spring south-facing coach dredging. So we did Great Pond, we did Bourne's Pond. Green Pond, we didn't have to do it this year, which was good. And the Eel River approach was deferred to the fall. Simpson's Landing, we didn't really have much to do on that. We're there to help the harbor master if he needed us, but that was a project that we really didn't add any value to. And then West Falmouth Dock, there was additional pilings and new landing floats added this year. Much of the materials was actually donated by the West Falmouth Boat Club. So what we're doing now is the dredging continues. We got some money from the Mass Works in 2018 that we weren't able to spend because the county dredge missed the time of year restriction last fall. So that is now being done in this month, we hope. It's outside the tides. That's the first priority when the county dredge is in operation. We have until January 15 to get that done.
Can I just ask, I'm sorry,
Sure.
where does that, when you dredge that, where does that sand go?
It's going to, remember?
I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think it's going to the tides, yeah. Yeah, it's going to the tides.
Okay.
Hit the escape button, Jeff.
Sorry.
Sorry, I didn't mean to throw you off. I was just curious about, I just know that there was a lot of erosion of that beach in this last.
Yeah, it's going right out here, kind of to the tides area.
Okay, thank you.
How likely is it that the dredge is going to be available?
Pardon?
How likely is it that the dredge?
The dredge is available right now. We're waiting for piping.
How likely is it this project's actually going to happen?
Mr. Fraser feels it's very likely to happen.
Great.
However, the next topic, the Eel River West Channel Extension and the approach. This was not done in this past spring because we ran out of time. This is the Minot Yacht Club, and this is the end of Washburn Island. So we did not do it in the spring. We're going to be doing it this fall. And the dredge is also here. This is really the other MassWorks project. This is really bad. This is like 2 feet right now in our main channel, and that hasn't been done and since I think 2016. So our priority, like I mentioned, was going to be the tides. This is the second priority, and we're concerned. We're in the queue waiting for the piping. We don't have a confirmation yet whether that's going to be done or not. And our third priority is the Eel River approach. We can do this in the spring if we don't make it this fall. So next year, our initiatives are the normal initiatives: the Great Pond, Green Pond, Bourne's Pond, and Eel River approach. It's really a matter of how bad the storms are in the winter, and we'll be looking at monitoring. There's a new boat ramp redesign in West Falmouth Harbor. That's on the docket for this coming year. the design of it, not necessarily the construction. And the other two is the Wacoit Bay main channel dredging and the Eel River West area of concern, which we'll talk about in a little more detail here. So Wacoit Bay has not been dredged for quite a while. The need was alerted to us by the Wacoit Bay Yacht Club. Two of their members are here today. They've gone to the waterways and to the harbor master. They actually did a study with the Woods Hole group, and in some areas there's 3 to 4 feet in the main channel. And Mr. Dunn actually went in the town records, and he doesn't think it's been dredged since World War II in 1943. So it's time to be dredged. This main channel has no impact to shellfish. And right now we're working with the Woods Hole group to get a cost estimate for an engineering study in the first quarter. We anticipate probably going to town meeting for next fall in order to get the money for the permitting and the dredging. So the other thing and the main item I wanted to talk about here for next year is the Eel River West area of concern. This particular area here, again, this is finding this thing. This is the Minot Yacht Club. This is the end of the island. We're always having issues with this. We cannot keep this channel clear. Every 6 months it fills in again. Some of the properties here are severely eroded, and every time we dredge, their erosion continues. So there was a local community initiative going. They tried to form a nonprofit in the last 2 years, and they failed to form the nonprofit. They actually got David Vieira to give them a grant, which was not able to be used by the state because their nonprofit didn't materialize. So now the Waterways is picking up the challenge with that with the harbor master. And that we're going to take that on our docket to use the town to approach, to get an engineering study to see what could be done with that. And I'm going to turn this over to Mr. King at this point.
Thank you. Kevin King, member of the committee. I've been coming to the meetings before as a member for a number of years. I found it confusing to keep track of all the areas that the Waterways is involved in. So I thought for my purposes, I would come up with a spreadsheet, and I would be using a database. So if you look at the town, these are the areas of concern that we're talking about that are going to be part of this database. And it encompasses all the waterways in the coastal ponds, town docks, and the boat ramps. Each one of these areas have particular criteria and needs that we have to address. So the spreadsheet, this is in the beginning stages. It'll be a work in progress working with the Harbor Master's office. So if we look at this, we'll break it down by each area of concern. And if we focus in on, let's say, West Falmouth, we can highlight the status of each individual area. If we look at dredging, an issue came up this fall that the entrance to the harbor, there's a dredging concern there. So we're going to address that next year in 2020. The ramps, you can see they're highlighted that this is something that's ongoing. The boat ramp will be replaced this year in 2020, as well as the docks that accompany the new boat ramp. The status for the docks, and you can see that the floating docks for the pier were replaced in 2018, and a new gangway was put in 2019. So for each area of concern, we'll have a status sort of selection, so people in the committee can keep track of the status of these areas, and this will be really helpful for new members of the committee when they come in. There's a lot of knowledge to be learned. Dredging.
Could I ask a quick question?
Yes, go ahead.
Is that something that could be available to the public through the
course.
website, so that if people who live in these areas have
Yes.
thoughts about who's looking at this, what are the projected projects, they could
Right.
kind of click on their area?
This could be saved as a PDF file.
Okay.
And it'll be on the website wherever you want it located, and it'll be updated as needed, so it'll be dated and updated.
I think that would be a great resource for people
I think
who
so.
live in these areas that they're concerned about things, to see what you guys are
Yep.
doing. That's great, thank you.
So dredging is a big issue, and for me, it's hard to keep track of all the dredging sites and locations. This is a spreadsheet that was taken from the Mass Division of Marine Fisheries, published in 2012. For all of Cape Cod, I took the spreadsheet out for the town of Falmouth. You can see it's pretty comprehensive, and you can see that each pond has a number of sections to it, depending on the criteria of the waterway. And it's broken down to the approaches to the waterway, the inlet, and the embayment. And each one of those have a different criteria, time of year restrictions and things like that. So if we take one area like Great Pond, and we highlight that, and we go into a new spreadsheet where we can go into all the details now of what's required to go into the dredging of that area. So when it was last dredged, planned dredging, time of year restrictions, and all that. Is the money available? There's keys for all the species for the time of year restrictions, if it's winter flounder, horseshoe crabs, and the like. So someone can look at this and they can say, okay, this is, you can go right through and say, you can find the crisis areas and what's been done and what needs to be done. So this is how the marine fisheries breaks and defines these particular areas. So this is the approach to the Eel River, Eel Pond Inlet. We've had a number of people who have come in the past 2 years with concerns about this inlet. It presents a safety concern for navigation because it's getting narrower. It is having negative impacts on personal property. And there's also a question of how, as this narrows, what is the impacts on the water quality of this embayment?
And I don't think that really is a very current map, because I think it's projecting out even further now, isn't it?
This is 2018.
Okay.
And we actually have so there's the embayment, that's the inlet and embayment, and we put together a 1-minute video, and I think that's back here, just to show that
was a slide.
Okay, so let's see if this is going to work.
You click on that, that's either the one with the video, yeah, that's the one, there's a play button right there.
Oh, there you go.
All right, so this is if it works, it's a time frame. So you can see how dynamic this area is from 1995 going up to 2018. You see that the channel gets narrower and narrower. And you also see after about 2018 how it impacts the property on the western side.
Eating away.
So at our last meeting, some people came to us and they were concerned about the safety issue of navigation. There's groundings that happen because it's shoaling up, and also people tend to park on the spit with their boats and people in the water. So we're trying to discuss how we can make this passage safe for navigation and to try to avoid people from parking there. The signs have been put up, and I guess the signs have been taken down, so we're trying to work with the harbor master, and he's trying to work with the yacht club and just the local residents and how we can make this a safer situation. These are some of the things that come to the committee that we discuss with the public and then try to come up with a resolution.
So dynamic, amazing.
It is, it's amazing, yes. Any questions?
I have one.
Yeah, go ahead.
On that West Falmouth boat ramp replacement?
Yep.
Is that another state project, or is that local
That I
management?
can't answer. Can you
No,
answer that
that's
question?
local.
Okay,
That's happening next year.
right.
And then I had a question about can you just tell us a little bit more about the potential 2020 for the Walkway Bay for that project? Are we talking about trying to get funding for a study in?
Yes, we need to get, well, the way the whole process works is, right, we need the engineering study, an estimate of the engineering study and the permitting, and then we can go to the town and figure out how we're gonna get that. And we'll have to go through either capital appropriation or through town meeting. I would ask Mr. Dunn if he knows, or Mr. Eldert. Do we have an estimate yet of what that study is gonna cost, do you think?
Yeah, I reached out to Woods Hole Group.
Chris, you just have to come up only because it won't pick it up, so, for folks at home, thank you. And just let folks know, I know you were introduced before.
Chris Dunn with Court Bay Yacht Club. So the harbor masters actually asked me to be an intermediary to the Woods Hole Group in obtaining this estimate for planning purposes. So I reached out to them in September and explained the scope of work that we were anticipating and asked them to provide input. We were advised at the Waterways Committee meeting a couple of days ago, they did not yet have that input. I reached out to the Woods Hole Group today to try and pick that communication up. And so I expect that number to be coming back anytime in the next few weeks.
Great, thank you. And you can pass that on to Mr. Frazier or to Waterways. Thank you.
So our goal is to make the next town meeting cycle and then get that process going as quickly as we can, but there's also all the permitting involved. And in that particular case, the spoils are not beach worthy.
Right.
So that's going to have to be a problem that we're going to have to solve. And the other thing I want to point out is, it may be hard to see here, this is the border between Mashpee and Falmouth is right about in the center of this bay. And this is the channel that comes out of Mashpee, and they're also interested in dredging their channel. So we're going to try to coordinate that effort with them, and we'll jointly figure out where to put those spoils.
Any further questions for the committee on this report? Yeah, Sam?
When you say that that dredging is not beach worthy, what's the contaminant that prevents that, or is it grain size?
It's organic matter. Mr. Dunn, you're more of an expert in that than I am, in that particular soil.
Yeah, again, the Yacht Club commissioned a study from the Woods Hole Group, and one of the things they did was they did a grain size analysis of the material in that channel. We took a half a dozen samples, and they were actually consolidated and assayed. The material in that channel is principally organic. It's a fine silt. It's about 10% sand, and the rest is an organic silt material. And so it's not suitable for beach disposal.
Great, thank you. Any other questions?
Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if we can just help to coordinate to, get that information
On the website?
on the website in a way that's, I think that's just really,
Yeah,
I don't know what you did in your former life before this committee, but those spreadsheets are really helpful to just
Indeed, they are.
take
Thanks
a
for
lot
all
of
the hard
information.
work.
Thank you all very much. And thanks for the committee for being here. Great, we have a report from Conservation Commission. Let me just ask if anyone's here for the Highfield Hall. Okay, I just want to make sure there's not someone sitting here for a sign variance. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not.
F5.
Peter?
F5.
F5. Okay. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Suso, Mr. Johnson-Staub. Good evening. I'm Jamie Matthews, Chairman of the Conservation Commission. I'm here to provide you Conservation's annual report. Our goal, of course, is to protect and regulate lands under jurisdiction through the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. We also act as stewards to town conservation lands. As you can see in this satellite image, Falmouth has a vast amount of wetlands, including ponds, rivers, various other freshwater wetlands. Falmouth also enjoys a significant length of saltwater shoreline, 95.1 miles. All of these areas need protection to preserve resource area interests including flood and storm protection, groundwater supply, and fisheries and wildlife habitat. You see in this slide, there's a lot of conservation land in Falmouth. The Conservation Commission works closely with the 300 Committee to protect this land and its natural resources, and also to provide public access and education for everyone in town. This map, just so you know, is on the 300 Committee website. On it, there's a link to a description of each area that's marked out in that with those red dots. Significant amount of space. Continuing that preservation effort is one of our special projects, the Coonamessett River Restoration. Phase 2 has begun. Also, the Greenway Heritage Trail is in its final stages of planning. And while we have no direct involvement other than regulatory, the Childs River Restoration Project is underway. All these projects have garnered more than $3 million in state and federal grants, not to mention the support of many different nonprofits and corporate sponsors. And that's just a good representation thereof. So for the commission, what did we do this year? We did what any self-respecting public agency would do. We held meetings. We meet every Wednesday night with few exceptions, and occasionally other days, so that we can meet the 21-day regulatory deadlines. Our meetings are to hold public hearings on the various applications brought before us, where we apply the regulations of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. This year, we held 234 hearings that included notice of intents, requests for determination of applicability, and requests to amend order of conditions. How did we do? Well, we held 37 meetings this year that averaged 2.5, 3 hours each. We enjoyed an 83% attendance rate from commissioners and have had a quorum for every meeting. This is a true testament to the dedication of our volunteer commissioners. Also, we have a 96.4% approval rating. Does that mean 96.4 people out of 100 like us? Sadly, no. But it does mean 96.4% received favorable orders of conditions for their project, allowing them to move forward with conditions that best protect our wetland resources. Just who serves you? Yours truly. I also serve on the Coastal Resiliency Action Committee, and I participate in the Local Emergency Planning Committee. Russ Robbins, our vice chair, he's also the chairman of the CPC. Maury Harlow Hawks, we have Courtney Bird. Betsy Gladfelter, who also serves as the coordinator for the Coonamessett River Restoration Project. Steve Patton, he also serves on the Housing Authority. Mark Gurney, Kevin O'Brien, Peter Walsh. Peter also serves on CPC. So you have a lot of people that are on multiple boards. What do these people bring to the table? Diversity. These people bring experience and expertise. We have scientists, engineers, landscaper, a couple of builders, policy providers, and teachers, and they all bring something else, common sense. These volunteers not only spend an average of 3 hours on a Wednesday night, but they also have to spend 4 hours or more on their weekends, typically, doing site visits in preparation for hearings so we can make informed decisions regarding all applications. I've met many homeowners and applicants on sites who have expressed to me their surprise and appreciation for the fact that people give up their weekends to go look at these projects. That's the diligence of this commission. How about that staff? Jen McKay, our administrator. Mark Kasperzak, our land manager and conservation technician. Kevin Newton and Alyssa Bergeron, our agents. Amy Coughlin, our administrative assistant, who's always assuring we don't run out of reading material. Susan Cronin, our recording secretary, making sure that reading material is accurate. These professionals work closely with applicants and are instrumental in guiding applicants through the process to assure a successful outcome. They keep the process running smoothly for us, making us as efficient as possible while meeting all the regulatory deadlines. Sorry, went too fast.
That shows you have it memorized. That's very impressive.
Special thanks to the various town departments for their continued support of our efforts on behalf of the town. Marine Environmental Services, DPW, including Engineering, Parks and Highway, Bob Shea and GIS, Town Council, Building Department, Zoning Health, Accounting, Administration, Town Meeting members, and of course, you, the Board of Select Persons. Isn't that cool? Lastly, this year we've had our share of highs and lows. We continue the Coonamessett River restoration, and we welcome the beginning of Childs River restoration. We mourn the passing of our beloved colleague and chairwoman, Mary Schumacher. We celebrated our shortest meeting to date, but we endured one of our longest to date. I'd like to thank my esteemed colleagues for their patience and perseverance. This year was another of long meetings, much debate, and difficult decisions. I thank them for their hard work and dedication. What they bring to the table is much appreciated. Thank you to staff for keeping us in line and keeping the engineers content. I speak for all of us when I say we appreciate the opportunity to serve the people of the town of Falmouth and to protect its resources. We value your support in this process. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. It's really, to hear that number of meetings and to, know what goes on in those meetings, that's just, it's just unbelievable that a volunteer group of people is able to and willing to, and that you guys have consistent quorums and, just that attendance rate to be able to take on these really tough issues week after week and sit through. And, every one of these projects is so fact-specific that it's, there's just no boilerplate for these. So just an
Right.
enormous gratitude from this board for all the work that you guys do. I feel pretty, I kind of feel like a slacker now that I hear 283 meetings, or however much it was. That's really impressive. Any questions from this board, or? Yeah, Sam?
Just to say, I can attest to it because I go to most of their meetings and see the way that they handle those various hearings, and I think they're done fairly and openly and with respect to the people who are applying, and as well as the fellow commissioners.
Thanks for your support.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Thank
you
you
so
all.
much. Did you have something?
I was just gonna say, you certainly got plenty of support at town meeting this year.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah, you had done your homework and it showed, so thank you very much. All right, we have a sign variance request, off-site premise promotional sign, Highfield Hall and Gardens Holiday Events fundraiser. Mr. Jones, did you have?
Yeah, I guess I'm concerned about this at Peg Noonan Park. I think if we say yes to this one, I think we are setting precedents to which organizations. I just don't think it's the right place for it. I do appreciate their asking permission for this, because I know the sign that they have right now at Depot Avenue, they don't have permission for. And often signs are put down at that corner. Many years ago, we did ask Molly's to come to us for permission to put their parking sign there. And so I would actually wish that Highfield came to us for permission for the sign they have at the end of the street, but I don't see that we should be putting these at Peg Noonan Park.
Any other thoughts about this? Sue and then Sam? Yeah.
Sure, I was wondering, I know at the end of Town Hall Square right here, there's a structure that has a lot of information. I believe that's
Chamber of
one-
Commerce oversees
Chamber
that,
of Commerce,
yes.
and I wonder if that might be an alternative. I don't know if they already use that.
I fairly certainly have a flyer there already.
Do they?
I would think
Okay.
they would.
Actually, that was my question. I thought it might be appropriate, and maybe a sandwich sign just to get a little more attention, but I think that's a more appropriate place.
Any other?
Just hard for them to advertise where they are.
Yes, understood.
Yeah, it is. But I do share Doug's thought that, Peg Noonan is sort of a prime location because of that Main Street. And then, I can envision, we have those months where we have 3 or 4 events that people are doing. Is that just going to kind of be a place that
Overgrown.
is, sort of littered with, not littered, but, too many signs and taking away from kind of what that place is. So
I guess at this time, I'll also take a discussion about the sandwich board signs. That all the ones that are currently on Main Street in front of businesses are against our sign code also. That the sandwich board signs are for perishable goods or when a business opens for the first time. But they're not actually supposed to be out there on Main Street
On a regular basis.
on a regular basis. I do think they block the sidewalk. I think they reduce the disabilities access on that sidewalk.
I had a question about Peg Noonan Park sign usage. What is I see people standing out there quite often with a sign that says, if peace, if not now, when,
No,
or
I think
something.
it's some religious folks that are.
And so
that
are they
there.
exempt from our?
I think they can just stand there because they're with their sign. So it's like if somebody wanted to protest or set up a little stand they can do some of that because they're with it. They don't leave it and
Okay.
go. So I think that they're able to do that because they're standing with their material.
Now, would the Highfield people be able to stand with their sign in the same way?
I guess if they were gonna have someone stand out there for a period of time, I don't know that our rules prohibit that.
Is there another spot that we might suggest for them then? Because it's coming up now, it's the 12th.
That's why I was thinking about the corner there, Town Hall Square.
Right.
It's prominent and already has a stand.
Kiosk.
A kiosk there, so if we allowed them to put it there, and that's an alternative and would support their activity, which I think we're all in favor of.
It would be nice to let them display somewhere. We'd like to support it. It's a pretty important thing in town.
Since you brought up the question of somebody holding a sign, I think that actually falls under the federal government's free speech, the right of free speech and advocate, and, your ability to be out in the public area. So I don't think we can curtail that.
So I think if someone wanted to, oh, I'm sorry. Did someone have their hand up? Oh, yep. Hand up here.
Brian Anderson, I'd just like to respond to Selectman Jones' comment about all the businesses. Many businesses have gone through boards with much expense to get special permits for their sandwich board signs. So before you say all of them are illegal and the people listening in the room think these business people are breaking law, I think you should check to see which ones have received special permits at their expense. Thank you.
I'm just saying they have not come before this board for permission.
Yes, I have.
Most of them, I think what his point is, there's a lot. Now I think almost. Yep. Okay.
I appreciate that.
Well, I think you're specifically talking about Main Street as well, downtown.
Right.
So, so just specific to this particular request,
Nobody's moved
it
it.
sounds like nobody is moving to approve it. So, perhaps we can just, let them know that that's just not a spot that this board is gonna support. Maybe they can come up with another way that they can.
Is there another
help to
spot that we
advertise it.
could approve?
Well, that's what I was gonna say. This is eminent, so can we give them at least a little wiggle room and give them an alternative?
I don't know, does anybody have
I don't want to tell, other people where to put their signs.
I don't know
mean,
where,
think
what
they
other
have to-
public property would they,
They're not going to have another chance to come back to
right.
us. Because their event
before
is-
this event?
Right.
I mean, if I could, there may not, I don't know if anyone has an idea about where that place might be. If you can think of a place that they might be interested in, you could approve it. They don't have to use it.
Right.
It would just create an option.
Right.
I don't know what that place would be.
Maybe they could ask St. Barnabas if they can put it on their lawn where St. Barnabas advertises their events. Maybe St. Barnabas would be willing to let them put it up on their lawn. That's it just could be a suggestion that's made to them. I mean, I don't know I have no connection with St. Barnabas, but that's a pretty visible area that does not impede.
It still needs our permission.
Yeah.
If they're gonna do it at St. Barnabas, any off-premises sign, whether it's on private property or not, needs our permission to do so. So we could grant permission to do it at St. Barnabas from the town point of view, but just.
Do we meet next week?
We do, but on the 16th, this is this Thursday,
Right.
so.
Well, that's the beginning of this posting of the sign, but they want to
Right.
post it from the 12th to the 20th, so they could still salvage, part of that time.
So, what's this board's pleasure? Does this board want to offer some suggestions that we approve, and then this group will have to do the legwork
I
too?
like Doug's idea of suggesting they come back to the next meeting with
On
a
the 16th?
specific request. That way, we're not, directing.
At least gives them 4 days, I mean,
At least we can do that.
okay, so maybe we can do that, and
We'll
maybe
advise.
we could, yeah, great. Thank you. Okay. We have discussion of proposed nip bottle legislation. This is a draft letter that we've had submitted to us by the Falmouth Litter Reduction Team, FLIRT. And essentially, this is returning to an issue that we've talked about before, but this is specifically directing and really asking whether or not this board wants to sign on to support some proposed legislation, namely House Bill 2881. So this board has seen the proposed letter. Alan, do you want to just give a quick summary, maybe a 2-minute summary for the public who hasn't seen it?
Good evening. I'm Alan Robinson. I'm a member of the Falmouth Litter Reduction Team. We attended a meeting back in the spring, I guess, where NIPS were on the agenda. And we were aware of, we talked about the House Bill 2881, which proposes to change or add to the definition of beverages in the state liquor law to include alcoholic miniatures, which we commonly call NIPS. And at that time, we voiced some concerns because there were some things we just didn't understand about the legislation. And that's months ago, I actually got an opportunity to hear Randy Hunt, the sponsor, the prime sponsor of the legislation, talk about it. And he recognizes that when it's passed, that only a 5-cent deposit return would be applied in the beginning, because that's what the state rules are for soda and liquor and beer, and the same would apply. And we felt, and he feels, as it turns out, that's really not going to change much in terms of the littering problem, that a 5-cent return on the NIPS would not get a lot of people to bring them back to the businesses. And of course, the businesses would have to be set up to accept them. But what Randy said was, it's going to bring further attention to the problem and further attention to the litter issue, both of NIPS and everything else, we think is valuable. And so that's why we came across with a letter, an email to you and a suggestion in a draft letter that you can use or modify as you feel appropriate to submit in support of that legislation.
Great. Thank you very much. Any questions or discussions from this board? And I know there are some folks who probably want to speak on it, so I'll hear from them. Yep, Doug?
Just from the litter reduction group, how would you feel if we went forward with a town meeting article to ban them in Falmouth?
I guess some members of the committee would be in favor of that, and and at least one member of the committee would not be in favor of it.
And I know the last time that we sort of talked about that, that your organization, and I know you did some outreach and you talked to some business owners, and there was certainly, and stop me if I summarize incorrectly, but it seemed like there was some real sentiment by a lot of business owners that there was some hope for some collaboration to address this issue, or that there could be some improvement in other ways that wouldn't be a ban, which I understand their concerns about a ban, and that some of those conversations have taken place.
Yes, back in June, we invited, I think there's 17 businesses in the town of Falmouth that sell liquor, and we invited them to a listening session, the Falmouth Litter Reduction Team. And I was very pleased that representatives of 9 of those businesses, including businesses here tonight, attended, and we listened to them. We weren't there to really have a discussion. It was more of a listening session. And we listened, and but some of them brought some ideas, some suggestions. And there's been a couple informal meetings about those. Most recently, just last week, or before this, some time ago, we were approached by the Keep Massachusetts Beautiful organization, which is an element of Keep America Beautiful, with an idea of actually doing a pilot project related to nips and nip litter in Falmouth. And so we heard that on Wednesday. We invited the representatives of two of the businesses who happen to be here. We invited to that a teleconference with them. So we are having discussions.
Great.
And I think there's some creative ideas of working together.
Great, thank you.
Was there a ban brought up in meeting with the businesses? And if so, what was the percentage in favor or against?
We were just listening, so we didn't have a discussion in
Okay.
asking for a poll or anything to that effect.
Thank you. I want to say thank you to you guys for the work that you're doing and the, literally on the ground counting things. I know solid waste has also been doing some recycling monitoring. So all of these things, I think, are just giving us a better picture of the problem and some of the possible solutions. And it really does take people that are out there actually counting litter or going through recycling and seeing who's in compliance. So that's really a helpful thing for us to have those numbers that you guys have presented in the past.
I think we
Sam?
should give some credit to some of the local community organizations who are doing the same thing. We're out there trying to clean up some of this because it's such an eyesore.
Thank you. Any comments from this board, and then I'll hear from anybody who wants to speak on this issue. Mr. Anderson, did you want to?
Brian Anderson from T-Ticket Market. I also own a business in Mashpee and one in Sandwich in Randy Hunt's district. Some years ago with Randy, he put a bill in front of the house. I've had the opportunity to testify twice in front of the committee in favor of the bottle bill. My testimony at that time is I believe the fee should be a quarter, not a nickel. And the handling fee for the retailers would have to be higher because handling these small units would be very difficult. I probably didn't make any friends in the industry attending those hearings and testifying. But I walk around the pond where I live and I pick up nips, and I used to pick them up by the plastic Stop and Shop bag full. Behavioral change is the only way we're going to change it. We can ban nips. You'll probably end up picking 200s and 375s if you ban those. There's, right now, as you probably are aware, some bans that are weaving their way slowly through the Massachusetts courts. While that was happening, our group is Massachusetts Package Store Association, and we said, what can we do to help? Through some work and through Keep America Beautiful, I believe some grant monies come available, and they're looking for towns to participate to try to change the behavior of people, because if we ban it, we're just going to be looking at a different size. It's their bad behavior that's causing the problem. So our approach was, is there any way for us to get businesses, the towns, and organizations together to try to solve the problem and change the behavior of a relatively small percentage of the customers that cause the problem. And we run into this ongoing and continuous in the liquor business. Most of our problems are caused by less than 1% of our adult customers. And it's very, very, very difficult to deal with them. We get no trespass orders continuously. You can go down and see 30 or 40 of them from my store alone, and every other package store does the same thing. But there's very little the police can do. I hope that this board is in favor of the bottle bill that Randy Hunt has proposed. Last time, we were able to get all of the state representatives on Cape Cod. I know of people that worked as far as Matt Merito's, I think, Section 1 of Plymouth, and all the way up to Shauna O'Connell's up in First Bristol. They were all on board. They all signed on to it. Getting the Senate on board, well, it's the Massachusetts Senate. What can we say? But any help that the selectmen can give, if any letter is sent, if we could send it, and I might be Telecommunications Committee. It's a strange name of the committee that will have the hearing coming up in March or April, but if you Google the bill, it says which committee, and as of this afternoon, the aide at Randy Hunt's office said they're thinking the next hearing will be February or March. But there are people in the industry that are pushing in favor of this, and as an alternative to try to find a way to educate that small percentage of customers that are a problem in my neighborhood and yours. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
My question is, for me, it's not just the litter issue. It's the way, I guess, the nips are, or why they're being purchased and the way they're being used. That they are, make it such a convenient thing for someone to be driving and drinking.
I'll invite you into my store, and I think you'll find that there is a percentage of customers that don't buy them for that purpose.
Okay.
We have quite a few people that buy sleeves of 10, and they know each one of them, husband and wife, can have one a day according to the pills they take and the medications, etc.
I'm just
The
wondering.
percentage that are abusing, I think if you find the total number of nips on the ground and the total number sold, is a small percentage. We have the same problem with alcohol with drunk drivers. I mean, we all read in the paper when someone's arrested for the 15th time, and you go, oh. And the fact of the matter is when's the last time anyone's got a fine in Falmouth for littering? When's the last time anyone, unless they were drunk driving, ever got a fine for an open container? It's eventually, if we can get everybody together, we will also ask for a little bit of enforcement. And that will help change behaviors. I don't think a ban will ever change behavior in a consumer product. Thank you.
Does anyone else want to speak about this?
I would move,
Sam, go
No,
ahead.
just a quick comment to Doug's. Looking at the nips in my neighborhood, I think it's people walking that are throwing these things out. I don't think it's coming out of automobiles. I'll say no more than that.
Well, in my experience, putting out the beach signs, I take one sign on one end of the, on beach, and it's all the Fireball in one little area. And then I get out to the other end and get the other sign, and there's a lot of little Smirnoff. And it seems like the same person comes there every day and leaves their little deposit on the beach. And they're clusters of these things, and they're all the same. I think it is a small percentage of people doing it again and again and again.
Similar for all types of litter. I mean, most people do not litter. I mean,
That's right.
that's why it's shocking when you see someone put their window down and they throw something out, because it's not a common thing that we see. I mean, most litter is going to be a pretty small group of people, whether it's a nip bottle or a bag from, McDonald's. It's
And the same thing on, when I pick up the trash on Shorewood Drive, you see the 7-Eleven big gulp, 3 or 4 in a row. It's gotta be the same person, in the same place, the same drink. But I would love to see the littering fine increased. As I said to you last year, I went that trip to Ireland, and I saw the sign in Galway, fine for littering, 2,000 pounds. Like, that alone, just having the sign there is a big deterrent. And I think we should increase the fine and start doing some enforcement, put some little miniature cameras down at the beach, and, start catching some people that are doing this and saying, knock it off.
Or just put a video sign.
Yes, exactly. We did that in Woodrise, because Woodrise was a cut-through for everyone, and we were just a nip collection neighborhood, and that's exactly what we did. So as to this particular draft letter, I think my opinion is I think it states pretty clearly kind of what the legislation is
I like
about. Do I?
I move approval of this, to send a letter of support.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for your input. Very helpful. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And if we could just follow up maybe on some of that discussion about the grant money or the pilot program that Alan was talking about and that Mr. Anderson were both talking about, see if there's any way we can tap into that. That'd be great. Thank you.
Did we miss a chance to hear from you?
No, I asked.
No, we were,
Did you want to
Okay.
say anything?
thank you very
All
much.
right.
I looked over many times. I was.
Merry Christmas.
Take care.
Take care.
They're supposed to do that at the podium.
Thank you. All right, I'm gonna return to the licenses. We are on Wine and Malt Restaurant, Bangkok Thai Cuisine, 291 Main Street, Country Fair, 319 Main Street, Homeport Sushi and Kitchen, 316 Gifford Street, Pizzas 1, Sub 2, 769 East Falmouth Highway, Silver Beach Pizza and Seafood, 557 North Falmouth Highway.
Move approval?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Wine and Malt Package Store, Wild Harbor General Store, 200 Old Main Road.
Move approval?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Common victular license, Añejo Restaurant, 188 Main Street, Bucatino Restaurant, 7 Nathan Ellis Highway, Sea Salt Wine Bar and Grill, 75 Davis Straits, Cape Cod Country Club, 48 Theater Drive, Captain Kidd, 77 Water Street, Conference Table, 205 Worcester Court, East End Tap, 734 T-Ticket Highway, Estia, 117 Main Street, New Peking Palace, 452 Main Street, Paul Harney Golf, 74 Club Valley Drive, Quarter Deck Restaurant, 164 Main Street, Quick's Hole Tavern, 29 Railroad Avenue, Silver Lounge, 412 North Falmouth Highway, The Cape Club, 125 Falmouth Woods Road, Amvets Falmouth Post 70, 336 Palmer Avenue, Bangkok Thai Cuisine, 291 Main Street, Country Fair, 319 Main Street, Homeport Sushi and Kitchen, 316 Gifford Street, Pizza 1, Subs 2, 769 East Falmouth Highway, Silver Beach Pizza and Seafood, 557 North Falmouth Highway, Betsy's Diner, 457 Main Street, Bite on the Go, 5 Old Meeting House Road.
Move approval?
Oh, there's still more, but we'll
Second.
stop with this. We can do this one for
Second.
now. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, continuing with that list. Coonamessett Farm, 277 Hatchville Road, Dana's Kitchen, 881 Palmer Avenue, Dunkin' Donuts, 1184 Sandwich Road, Dunkin' Donuts, 634 Holly Park Road, Dunkin' Donuts, 614 Main Street, Dunkin' Donuts, 363 East Falmouth Highway, Dunkin' Donuts, 4 Sandwich Road, Yolinda's, 634 West Falmouth Highway, Molly's Tea Room, 227 Main Street, Primetime House of Pizza, 338 East Falmouth Highway, Primetime House of Pizza, 286 Old Main Road, East Falmouth Subway, 236 East Falmouth Highway, Supreme Pizza, 147 T-Ticket Highway, Talk of the Town Diner, 362 North Falmouth Highway, Taste of Two Chefs, 420 East Falmouth Highway, The Village Cafe of West Falmouth, 634 West Falmouth Highway.
Move approval?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Inn holder license, Inn on the Square, 40 North Main Street, Falmouth Holiday Inn, 291 Jones Road, Falmouth Inn, 824 Main Street.
Move approval?
All those- All those in favor?
Aye.
Entertainment, Portuguese American Association of Falmouth LLC, 55 Ashumet Road, Amvets, Falmouth Post 7336 Palmer Avenue, Falmouth Inn, 824 Main Street, Bucatino Restaurant, 7 Nathan Ellis Highway, Captain Kidd, 77 Water Street, East End Tap, 734 T-Ticket Highway, Quarter Deck Restaurant, 164 Main Street, Quick's Hole Tavern, 29 Railroad Avenue, The Cape Club, 125 Falmouth Woods Road.
Move approval?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Sunday Entertainment, Falmouth Inn, 824 Main Street, The Cape Club, 125 Falmouth Woods Road, Captain Kidd, 77 Water Street.
Move approval?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Automatic Amusements, Pizzas 1, Subs 2, 769 East Falmouth Highway, Falmouth Inn, 824 Main Street.
Move approval?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Used car dealers, Class 1, 2, and 3. Sid's Auto Brokers, 91 Carlandy Circle. Costa's Auto Body, 222 Carrot Shop Road. Executive Auto, 118 East Falmouth Highway. Falmouth Auto Center, 614 East Falmouth Highway. Falmouth Salvage, 9 Hayway Road. Rainey Trucking, 9 Hayway Road. Seaside Auto Sales, 14 Nye Road. T-Ticket Auto Body, 108 Trotting Park Road. Walk White Auto Sales, Inc., 506 Walk White Highway.
Move approval?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Vehicles for hire, AA Taxi, 90 Boxbury Hill Road, All Seasons Taxi, 45 Simpson Lane, Falmouth Taxi, 424 East Falmouth Highway.
Move approval?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. And now we are going to announce the April 2020 town meeting schedule. All right, so the schedule that we have before us, we have Selectmen announced town meeting, annual town meeting, Monday, December 9th. That's today. The warrant will close Friday, January 17th, 2020. The Selectmen will vote articles and execute the warrant on Monday, January 27th, 2020. Publish articles only Friday, January 31st, 2020. Presentation on petition articles, excuse me, Monday, February 10th, 2020. Selectmen vote recommendations on Monday, March 9th, 2020. Publish warrant and recommendations and mail warrant booklets Friday, March 27th, 2020, and town meeting will be held on Monday, April 13th, 2020.
Would that be our schedule?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so next on our agenda is to discuss our correspondence agenda practice. And this is something that Doug Brown sort of brought up and he and I had a bit of a conversation about coming back to this.
Madam Chair,
Oh, I'm sorry,
do you
did I
have
skip something?
the selectmen meeting scheduled formally?
Indeed, yeah.
Not town meeting, but the.
Month by month.
Oh, right, the
Board of-
whole,
Oh, I'm sorry,
Select
excuse
board
me.
meeting.
But you
Yep.
can take out of order, I didn't mean to
Excuse me.
interrupt. but
All right.
you wanna
All right, so,
Batch that together.
yep, thank you, I skipped right over that. I gave it a check when it didn't deserve one. All right, so for January, we have the 13th, the 6th is the budget presentation.
Right.
Okay, then we would meet on the 13th. The 20th is MLK Day, and then the 27th, we would meet to vote the articles. Okay. And we have affirmative action, are these invitations have been set out, correct?
Well, they would be subject to your approval.
Okay, so let's go through that. So on the 13th, the proposal is that we would hear from Affirmative Action Committee. They would come here and make a report. And that on the 27th, we would hear from Affordable Housing. Yep.
Yeah, I think it's good.
Everybody good with that? Okay.
Yep.
If anybody feels these dates aren't good, or they're not gonna be here and they'd prefer us to have a committee come on a
Chair,
different.
can I just interject? And I know Diane mentioned it in their agenda packet that we very much appreciate the suggestions that Selectman Jones had made in terms of
The timing
potential
of it.
meeting dates with the various committees. And it doesn't follow in lockstep, but it's very close. And that is, just wanted to affirm that's based upon looking at options and a few adjustments that Diane has suggested here. So I want to thank Doug for all that great input and that of the other board members as well. And Diane has tried to collaborate and pull that together as a result. So.
and it's a good guideline to, heads up that, this is coming up, and if it needs to be adjusted here and there, we can,
Yes.
Okay, great.
Thanks, great.
Yes, thank you. I know this takes a lot of work to coordinate all of this, so thank you to Diane and everyone who's worked on it. In February, we would meet on the 10th. This is for petition article presentations. And then there was some thought about ZBA and Planning Board coming on that day. Okay, and having some discussions on that day about some relevant issues that we all weigh in on. And then we would also meet on the 24th, and we would have Agricultural Commission, is it commission or committee?
Commission.
Commission, okay. And then Board of Health, present on both those days. Didn't we just have Board of Health?
You did.
Are we just
Yeah.
trying to set it for
We're
the next year?
changing the cycle.
Okay.
Yes, on some of
Okay.
these are going to a different month.
Yep, that's fine, I just want to make sure that we were,
And some of the ones that we met most recently, pardon me, Madam Chair, were postponed at their request and delayed.
Bless
So
you.
we're hoping when we get these set up that they will make every effort working with the board to stick with that date and time. Because as we've all found out, sometimes these deferments and delays, you end up with 3, 4, and 5 in one time, and it just becomes very unwieldy.
yep, good point, thank you.
Mhm.
In March, on the 9th, we would meet to vote article recommendations and have a quarterly report from police, maybe fire and DPW on those days. Good start to sort of that quarter period. Maybe a joint meeting on the 16th. And then Selectmen's meeting on the 23rd. We would have some license renewals. Library trustees would come and present, and Cable Advisory Committee. Any of those dates present a problem? Okay. April 6th, Selectmen's meeting, and then an update from Substance Use Commission and Human Services Commission. Our meeting would be on the 13th. And the 27th, we would have the Selectmen meeting with Recreation coming to present.
We should understand we're likely to have select board meetings on the 13th, 14th, and 15th.
Good point, thank you. And then in May, on the 11th, Selectmen's meeting with Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee and Transportation Management Committee. That would be their first report to us. And then Selectmen's meeting on the 18th with a presentation from CPC, town election being the next day. And then in June, Selectmen's meeting on the 1st. We'd reorganize the Board of Selectmen after that meeting. Quarterly reports again from Fire, Police, and DPW. The meeting on the 15th with Concom presenting and EDIC. Meeting on the 22nd, committee interviews and renewals with a 6 p.m. start. And then our retreat on the 29th with a 5 p.m. start.
One thing we did not, Diane and I didn't discuss this, but you'll notice we've not put more temporary committees on this schedule. For instance, the Coastal Resiliency Action Committee or the Edward Marks Committee.
Right, 'cause it'll
which,
be as is, right? Yeah.
that those will come
Good
at
point.
different points, but these are the ones of if we get into this, and every year we got in the habit of, this is when we always heard from them, they got used to it, there wouldn't be the deferrals, but of course, there are gonna be other committees also that are gonna be coming forward.
Thank you. And then in July, we would meet on the 13th and have Council on Aging and Disabilities Commission coming before us. We would meet on the 27th for Cultural Council would come before us, and we would announce the November town meeting schedule on that day. In August, we would meet on the 10th, hear from Energy Committee on the 24th from Gulf Advisory Committee, and potentially use that August 17th date as a joint meeting. Labor Day in September on the 7th. The 14th would be Selectmen's Meeting, Capital Plan, Presentation and Budget Policy. On the 21st, we would meet and we would vote and execute the warrant, maybe another quarterly from Police, Fire, and DPW. On the 28th, Selectmen's Meeting, Petition Article Presentations, and a meeting with School Committee, a presentation from School Committee. Selectmen's Meeting on October 5th, vote
Quick
articles.
question,
Yep.
on school committee, that's a kind of a crazy time to ask for presentation because they're just starting their year. So I'm just wondering if that might be something they might want to read in on.
You want to just check in and see what their
Yeah,
thoughts
check
are?
with
If they
them,
like it at the
certainly.
beginning of the year to sort of highlight what's coming, or at the end of the year to talk about what's.
If I might say, I mean, that's actually a good time for them to report on the achievement of their students, because all the testing will have been compiled by sometime around the middle of July. So I think it actually is, it is historically when the school committee
Used to come.
reported, because I used to come as chair to report. And it's an input into the annual report. So I think the timing is actually pretty good.
So we'll just double check and make sure that this particular committee still feels that
Yeah.
same way.
Madam Chair, could I also interject? I'd had an informal request a while ago from Superintendent Lori Dorr asking about the possibility of a second meeting with the school committee and the Board of Selectmen, potentially in the first quarter of the coming year. So if that's something that you would entertain, I could get back to you with a
Absolutely. I mean,
possibility. That would be one of those, as Selectman Jones has talked about, that would be maybe slotted in and not necessarily their every year meeting date.
no, absolutely. I think it's, I mean, our school department is, even if we're not talking about the value that they provide, it's also a very big ticket item for our town. So anything that we can do to kind of coordinate efforts and hear about what their thoughts are.
It was historic that we did the first, so
Yeah.
we should keep it up.
Yeah, keep up meeting with them. I think that's great.
Great.
It's not, by the way, it's not historic. There are plenty of precedents before that.
Joint meetings with the Board of Selectmen?
Absolutely. In my
I'm
time on
glad
this.
we got back to it.
Well, I agree with you.
Yeah, I think we got away from it for a while, so. Okay, in October, we would have on the 5th, Selectmen's Meeting, vote articles and recommendations to hear from the Beach Committee. Maybe a possibility for a joint meeting on October 19th. And on the 26th, we would meet fee hearing and historical commission. Then for November, obviously, we have town meeting potentially on the 9th. We haven't set that date yet, but I know we're looking far out, but it's usually around that timeline. The 16th, Selectmen's Meeting with Solid Waste Advisory Committee. And on the 23rd, Selectmen's Meeting, Annual License Renewal Board of Assessors, Veterans Council Committee. In December, we would have the 7th, Annual License Renewals, another quarterly from Fire, Police, DPW, and meeting on the 21st, Annual License Renewal, Waterways, and Water Quality Management, Committee. And that is it for proposed.
I think that's a great ton of work, and, you know, we've always had an open invitation for committees. We've reached out to a few based upon issues that have been before us, but to have this expectation and maybe even post it as a, as a draft calendar for, just, folks at home that are interested in particular things. I think it's great. Thank you, Selectman Jones and Diane and Chair, everyone who was involved. It's great.
Yeah, it's really
Great.
helpful. Thank you. Any other questions about that, folks?
Nope, I like it.
Okay,
I agree.
great.
Do we want to vote that?
I think we want to vote that as our
Please-
proposed
please, if you
schedule.
would.
Okay,
Okay.
so do I have a motion?
I move that we accept the proposed calendar for 2020.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Okay, back to what I was jumped ahead to before. So, there have been some questions about sort of what does the correspondence, agenda item mean and how do we use it? And specifically, Mark Cool had asked, why we hadn't sort of discussed some correspondence that he had sent. And, it was, and I think understandably so, was a little bit confused about how do we use that correspondence? And part of our conversation was we don't, it wouldn't be, I'm just gonna say what my opinion is. My opinion is it wouldn't be practical to talk about all correspondence we've received because there would be a lot and, much of it is either someone sharing an opinion that they might not even want to be, before. Sometimes they have a problem or something that they're trying to work through. And also it just wouldn't be practical to talk about 50 letters at the end of a meeting. I don't know how it would be. I don't even know how we would really agenda it, because we would only say correspondence, and that's not specific enough, I don't think, to meet open meeting law requirements that people know what we're gonna talk about. So,
Also, just the organization of
Right.
it, very confusing, as opposed to a lot of correspondence we receive, we put
Becomes an
together
item. Yeah.
with an agenda item.
right, it becomes an agenda item. So I guess the conversation I just wanna have is, what are our thoughts about, how we're using this? Are there ways that we can, improve it? And again, bearing in mind sort of the logistics and the requirements of open meeting law, and what are people's thoughts about it? So I'll start with Sam, because he had his hand up, and then I'll go to Doug, because I know you've been thinking about this a lot.
I think it's important that people realize that they need to just get it as an agenda item for us to actually have
Real discussion.
the authority really to discuss it, because it needs to be posted ahead of time. We just can't ad lib what happens in any of these meetings. That's why we can't respond to public comment. So if somebody wants their item actually discussed and deliberated, it ought to come to the chairman or to the town manager as a request to be part of one of our town meeting agenda items.
I think, well,
So-
yeah. Doug.
So I reached out to Ahmed Mustafa to ask how this was handled during his tenure, and Mr. Cool had alluded that he thought maybe Mr. Mustafa was the originator of it. And Mr. Mustafa said that originally he brought it up because he was concerned that some people were telling him that, I sent you a letter, didn't you get it? So he was saying, I want to make sure that I'm receiving all my correspondence, and then wanted to make sure that it was being acknowledged as well as received. So it wasn't really a specific, they didn't sit at the end of the meeting and
Go through.
rattle off, we received all these letters from so-and-so or such and such. And when I described to him what our current policy is, he said that's pretty much what the policy was then. It was just that it was on there to just make sure people realize that we do pay attention to the correspondence. But maybe there should be some sort of a more formal way that people can, expect what the correspondence is, what's gonna happen with it. I know right now, someone replies to all correspondence, even if it's just a simple reply saying we've received your comment. But, recently we've had a lot of comments about the West Falmouth Fire Station, and we go through these periods of time when we have important topics and we get a lot of correspondence. So I guess what we should probably do is at the end of the meeting say, we've received, say, 40 or 50 letters of comment about the fire station, if we have a preponderance of letters. And like you said earlier, with individuals, we just respond to the individual and address the concern. And it's not really something that we have to put out in the public.
I just get worried, oh, sorry, go ahead, Doug.
I understand the way we usually use it for is if a piece of correspondence suggests a future agenda item, that we bring up the correspondence and saying, and I'd like to have this be a future agenda item. And so I would list it on the agenda as discuss correspondence
Requested.
for future discussion or for future agenda item requests. I don't think we need to report, because I don't know where you draw the line between, and okay, I also received 10 emails about this, and to have the board chair having to recount the 50 different emails that we received over a week, I think is a waste of our time.
You don't have to recount them, but just acknowledge that there is a large number of large
Which I think
volume.
is what Doug is saying, that you would then say, I've gotten, we've had a lot of correspondence, or even just, maybe you've only gotten one, but it's a really important issue, and we can say, I received correspondence about whatever it might be, I'd like to suggest that as, so it's a mechanism for the board, by way of constituents, to recommend items for a future agenda, which I think is helpful for people who've sent in letters to know that they've seen them, but it also, it just, we're not discussing it. We're suggesting something, because I think we just have to be really careful that we really cannot have discussions about
That's right.
things that aren't on our agenda. So I just feel like we don't want to set ourselves up.
It's almost impossible.
Right.
Yeah,
But-
unless the chair only says, I've received items on X and such, and I'm considering it for
I don't
an
e-
agenda item.
Yeah.
If we participate, by definition, it's a violation, a very, very high possibility.
I think-
So it's a double-edged sword.
I thought that was the one thing we are allowed to discuss without being on our agenda, is whether something is going to be a agenda item or not.
It's
So why
just
don't we-
hard to
so
do
why
that
don't-
without
yeah.
discussing the subject itself, because that, by definition, whether it should be an agenda item, it is based upon the substance. And so it's a very tough thing to do.
I think it wouldn't, I envision it in this way, that it's not a discussion. It's Doug saying to me, I've received correspondence about wind turbines. I would like to have the wind turbines on a future agenda. That's it. And the chair takes note of that, and then,
Still can do what you want.
we're gonna do whatever, but I mean, again, it's just sort of noting it, and I think it's an appropriate way for a board member to kind of, maybe only you received it, maybe only, most things go to all of us, but sometimes that's not true. Sometimes people reach out to,
People feel a connection, they
yes,
might send to an
so
individual.
you may have received something from one person or 10 people that we haven't seen, so it's a good way to share that, but I think it has to be really clear that there's not a discussion
Right.
on it. It's just so maybe we can think about the way what we call it. Peter?
Just potentially another way to get at the same issue, you have the selectmen individual items now. Maybe you want to suggest a future agenda item based on a conversation you had at the coffee shop, or maybe based on an email that
Could
you
be on
received.
anything.
So I guess my question is, why not just handle it under selectmen individual reports?
I think that's a great idea.
I think
And then correspondence, in my view, is more about particular, whatever. We got a letter from the state complimenting the town on, its handling of financial planning because of our award. It's that type of correspondence, and I think
feel
it's
like
really up to the chair as to whether it's an announcement type of correspondence. That's the way, so I guess I've had more of Peter's view.
What if, go ahead, Peter.
Just one other thing to add. So I spent just a very little bit of time poking around some other communities and how they handle their agendas. And a lot of communities don't have anything like this. Some do, but what they do is they have that agenda item there, and then if there is a particular piece of correspondence or two or three, they list them on the agenda, and then you can talk
Something.
about them.
Yeah.
So that's, it may be that we have, another approach might be you have that as a default item. If there is no correspondence that the chair or the town manager or the other members have said, hey, could you put this on the agenda, then maybe it just comes off, right? Because if you don't post it, the letter from the state, you could always probably make an announcement, I got a letter under selectmen individual items, that's not gonna be afoul with the open meeting law. But if there's a piece of correspondence and you really want to talk about it, it should be listed individually on the agenda.
Right.
Dan?
I don't want us to take that too casually, though, because it seems to me, if there's an item that's really important, an agenda item, then we ought to have the opportunity to bring resources in so we have an objective deliberation about the issue itself. If we just ad hoc throw stuff on there, then I don't think that's going to be a very valuable deliberation.
I mean, I guess I think that if an issue is significant enough, whether we've received it through correspondence or, like you said, someone comes up to you, it's going to be an agenda item.
Yeah.
And otherwise, I guess I don't understand really the value of correspondence. I understand why Mr. Mustafa at the time was probably, just wanted to acknowledge that he was receiving it. But I think, open meeting law is pretty strict, and I don't want us to set ourselves up to kind of casually just keep, violating it by it's very easy to start, for someone to say, oh, I got this letter about whatever the issue is, and then start to talk about that issue.
And Mr. Mustafa, that was before email. We all get correspondence. In Mr. Mustafa's time on the board, the mail might have gone to Diane, and maybe it didn't get into the packet quick enough from her. It was not the time of the facile communication that we have right now for all of us. We all receive things, you know, a myriad of things all the time.
I think Peter's suggestion is an excellent one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Remove it and just have it,
If there's
if
something.
you've gotten one letter from somebody, then in your individual report, you can say, I received this letter, love to have it as an agenda item. And not discuss it, it's just part of one person's report. Even if the town manager gets a state letter, he can say, I received this state letter.
Sure.
We can make it as agenda item, or here's the announcement. And because we're not gonna have any discussion about any of them. Because I do think to list them as a potential item, agenda item, the very, very bottom of our agenda is not giving it the attention it needs.
Right.
If it's worded.
Okay, so I don't think we don't have a policy. I don't think we need a policy necessarily, just to sort of, you know, review this when things are on, when they become a habit for a while. Sometimes we don't know why they're there, but does that address your concern, Doug, about us using it as a time to say, I received letters about this, I'd like it to be an agenda item?
Well, yeah, eventually, you know, if we have a large volume of letters, we're gonna be putting it on the agenda,
Yeah.
no doubt.
And that's how we would use that correspondence, is just to, okay. Anything else on that issue that folks are?
I've received a lot of letters about the West Falmouth Fire Station. We should probably have an agenda item.
I think we should.
Exactly, that
We
will
have a
definitely be,
committee,
yes,
too.
we have a committee coming up. Okay, excellent, so under meeting minutes, any,
So it's Monday,
Changes.
September the 23rd.
Right.
yeah,
I read them and found them to be in order, and so I would move approval and release for public access.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye. On the meeting, on the minutes for Monday, November 25th, I do have one suggestion. Page 3, I challenged our finance director to look at how we should be addressing the whole affordability issue and the fact that we're not finding ways of subsidizing affordable housing. And she did, I thought, commit. So I suggested we add in the second, in that second paragraph, but just a follow-up sentence that says, Mrs. Mullen indicated she would report back to the select board on ways the town could assure greater residential affordability. So I would just put that in as a note.
Okay,
A commitment that was made during the meeting was casual, and there's no deadlines
And I'm sorry,
associated.
could you say that again? I missed
Sure.
that.
Mrs. Mullen, or you want to say the finance director, it doesn't matter, indicated she would report back to the select board on ways the town could assure greater residential affordability.
any other comments about that?
I think it was if asked, in other words, if sort of, you
If we
know.
direct her to do it?
Right, exactly. Essentially, she would do whatever
A
the Board of Selectmen
presentation.
want. Exactly.
Okay.
So I would agree with that, with that addition.
Any other, and everything else, no other corrections?
With
Okay,
that- With that addition.
so with that addition,
I would move
all-
approval.
do we have a
and
second?
Release for public
Second.
All those in favor?
access.
Aye, great, okay.
Abstain.
Okay. We have executive session from October 28th.
I move approval and not release for public access at this time.
Second?
Is that not one we could release?
I don't see that we actually have gotten an agreement on that negotiation.
We do have agreement with the sergeants. It's the first in the cycle. We don't have an agreement with patrol or lieutenants. So in terms of collective bargaining strategy,
Probably shouldn't be
as a
released.
whole, it's probably a little early to release it.
So
I
just
thought this
as-
actually was a
as
good
I move.
bargaining piece to release it and say, here's where we stood, but.
Yeah.
All right. So.
Second on Sam's motion?
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, great, okay. Excellent. Individual selectmen reports.
I attended Mark's Building Committee, and they're moving along with getting ready to present to us on the 16th. And they have a nice PowerPoint with a lot of information, and they've done a lot of work. They meet every couple of weeks, and they're volunteering a lot of time over at the old building, documenting the moldings and so forth, so it's a good committee. I also attended the Coastal Resiliency Action Committee, their regular meeting, and their meeting at the Gus County Rec, which Elise Leduc was presenting again on the surf drive.
Yep.
And that was another very good, well-attended, 100 people at least on that room. That was really crowded. And we might need bigger venues for these coastal resiliency things.
Maybe the
'cause
high
The word
school.
is starting to get out now, and people are taking an interest. And maybe even the high school might
Yep.
be appropriate. Let's see, I'm going to be meeting tomorrow with the school committee to discuss the disposition of the Marks building, the
Veterans.
Veterans, John DeMello building. So I'll report back to you later after we see what they think about
I'll
it.
be joining you for that meeting,
Yeah,
Doug.
good.
Just, in support, of course.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Sam?
It was fantastic Christmas parade. The weather couldn't have been better. It was a beautiful parade and festive spirit. Lots of children, parents, and grandparents came out to spot it, get to enjoy it. So it was a very nice occasion here in town. I heard a lot of compliments from people who were visiting the town about everything that was going on through the entire weekend, and how impressed they were that Falmouth could rally so much activity and enjoy such a community spirit around
Chamber
the
of
holiday.
Commerce.
Yeah, they did a really great job. I might mention that this past weekend, which is the reason I don't get to more of these events, my daughter's ultimate Frisbee team comes in, and it's really a mixed male-female teams from all over New England come in here and have a tournament. The first tournament, it was actually two tournaments. On Saturday, it was at the Trotting Park Fields. And one of the things I noticed was that they had cordoned off part of the Trotting Park Fields to let them recover from past activities, which I think is really a good indication that we're finally getting around to managing the condition of our fields and allowing them to recover after heavy use. And they noticed that as well. So, and then the other thing was that as I was passing by the skateboard park, or the future skateboard park, I see the construction is moving forward. It's nice to see that, and my hat's off to Dr. Keith Blyler and Sandy Cooney for championing that
Long
over
work
a lot of
many
years,
years.
for sure. But it is beginning to take form, and it's just a great thing to see. That's
Thank
it.
you.
I'll just say that in my role as the Falmouth representative to the Assembly of Delegates, I occasionally make reports to the Board of Selectmen and the public, and I actually taped one at FCTV. So there's Assembly News. Jeff, great producer, and so if you're interested, tune into that.
Great. I won't repeat that it was a fabulous weekend, and hats off to everybody. It was just huge. It's really logistically very difficult to pull off what took place. And for Public Works, for fire and police, it's just a lot of work when they would love to be enjoying things with their families. It's a whole lot of work for them throughout the weekend. But it was just a great event. I was part of an event this weekend that took place to celebrate Azorean, Portuguese, and Cape Verdean the immigration story and the heritage here in Falmouth, and it was something that Lou White did a presentation on it, as did Miguel Moniz, who is, grew up here in Falmouth, but is a professor who lives in Lisbon, but he's partnered, and he went to Brown, and he's actually sort of a dual professor at Brown. He's been teaching a course while he's here, and he did a great presentation. We also had an individual from the Portuguese department at UMass Dartmouth, which is a separate and independent department from the foreign language department. It's one of the few in the country that is like that. And he offered his help, and I talked to the superintendent about this, but he offered really considerable resources that they have if we want to try to bring some Portuguese language back into our public schools here in Falmouth. And he was very dynamic, really excited to see the turnout. It was an excellent turnout, and really great opportunity for the Cape Verdean and Portuguese and Azorean, Portuguese as a whole, but when you break that down, sort of mainland Portugal, Azoreans, and Cape Verdeans to come together and talk about some similarities in experience as well as some differences. And I'll just say one of the really most entertaining pieces is that Professor Moniz was reading letters from the Enterprise from the 1900s when there was this very Portuguese sentiment, and they are the feistiest letters. I mean, they make the letters to the editor now just seem absolutely tame. They were They were really, there was an ongoing battle between John Emerald and Mr. Swift about sort of the merits of Portuguese immigrants and the, detriments of Portuguese immigrants. So, great community event, and we're gonna see if we can try to make it something that's an annual event that we maybe connect with the schools a little bit. So, a lot of fun.
That must have been an interesting banter, because Mr. Swift was the bog owner, right?
Yes, we were all his workers, but he didn't want his children to go to school with us. So yeah, that was so it was very colorful and but just a great historical, just a great look back in history in our town in a way that a lot of us just kind of we forget some of that stuff.
Right.
So it was really interesting.
Yes.
Nothing new under the sun.
Yeah, we're inclined to think that all our problems are unique.
Yeah,
and never occurred
everything old
before.
is new again,
Fascinating.
right? Exactly.
Fascinating.
Like,
But, yeah, I'm sorry, Doug, go
I
ahead.
was just gonna
Yeah.
say, like, 1909, the MBL started buying up property like crazy because the prices of real estate were skyrocketing.
Yeah, yeah, in the 1909, right? We love those prices now.
Yeah, I'll say. Well, I also enjoyed, as you all did, attending the multitude of community events from the caroling event Friday night at Peg Noonan this year rather than the Knobska Light. It started out, it was a rainy evening, but it was a good kickoff. And then, of course, we had the glorious weather for the balance of the weekend and the stroll, the lighting of the town common, and obviously the parade. So Woods Hole had a big event as well Saturday morning. And I think they have something else coming up this weekend at the aquarium, I believe. I saw, although I don't think it's come forward to us as a special event.
Lighting lobster pot tree or something?
Something like that, yes. So a good time was had by all, and it really puts the community's traditional best foot forward. So it's really an honor and a privilege to participate in whatever way we can. So thank you for that.
Peter?
All set?
Okay.
Move we adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you all very much.
The final meeting of December, a week from tonight, so.
Okay.
Of the year.